Дякуємо за авто підписникам Меркадо Медіа. В цей час воно нам дуже необхідно.
Дякуємо глядачам каналу Меркадо Медіа за збір на цю автівку. Слава ЗСУ!
Слава Україні! Я головний сержант 2-ї саперної інженерної роти 33-го окремого інженерного батальйону. Хочу висловити подяку Меркадо та його підписникам за таку чудову машину. Ця машина нас приведе ближче до перемоги. Победа за нами, слава Україні!
Hi guys, today I want to appreciate the Mercado Media, all the friends and subscribers and the Navy community for this wonderful pickup truck. Слава Україні!
Героям слава! Всім привіт! Я Вадим, позивний режисер, 42-га окрема механізована бригада. Ми зараз ведемо бої на Харківщині. Дякую Меркадо Медіа і всім підписникам його каналу за придбаний автомобіль. Він дозволить нам ефективно і успішно виконувати бойові завдання на Харківщині. Я сподіваюся, що цей автомобіль дозволить швидше здобути нашу перемогу. Слава Україні!
I want to give a big thank you to Mercado Media and Johnny FD, two close friends who have helped me create this fundraiser between ourselves to help raise funds for what is needed essentially on the front line. And I also want to give a big thank you to both Mercado Media and Johnny FD's followers for helping us achieve this goal of funding the first car for our fundraiser. The car is going to be put to good use on the front lines in aiding us with helping to carry out our mission and also helping us to clear Ukraine of the invader. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mercado Media, Johnny FD, Kozak Gundi, and all your subscribers for the generous donation of this van. It will help us with our logistics in the International Legion.
Dear friends of NAFO, my name is Pete, hasta la vista, from Project Constantine. This beautiful beast was donated to the brigade that we're friendly with in the forest, 67 Brigade. 69th Infantry Brigade donating to 67. It's pretty cool. I keep bumping into this vehicle in the forest. We never have time. We never have time to actually make any videos or get inside your vehicle and do any missions with it because we're like passing ships in the night here. But Mercado Media, Andrew, you NAFO supporters, it's beautiful to see this grand vehicle that you've got for this brigade because it's a reliable vehicle and I've never seen it anywhere other than in the forest. I've never seen it in the garage. And yes to that, and all Ukrainians must live. Bakhmut is Ukraine. This forest is Ukraine. And Mercado Media and NAFO, you guys are here supporting us, man, and we freaking love you to pieces. Thank you for what you're doing for the soldiers of Ukraine. God bless you. To victory. Do peremoha.
How did everybody check into the stream today? We got March 2nd, 2025. Got another panel discussion today. Smaller panel. We're still waiting on a couple of our guests to join, but we have Georgie and Nick from In Time ready to go. So we're gonna get her started and start talking and what is happening in Ukraine and all the latest news and the fallout from the Oval Office meeting. We're gonna be getting into that with our panelists today. To support Ukraine, Project Constantine's fundraising at a 320,000 euro. If you guys would like to support those efforts and support the front lines of Ukraine, this is how you can do it until we get our, well, and beyond, but we're going to have our own fundraiser coming up from Cars for Ukraine. Right off the bat, we got $20 from Dunk on You. There's Heroem Slava Peter, Slava Ukraine, and also the 5 gifteds. All right, we'll do that, but also support Project Constantine and Ukraine. All right, thank you so much to everybody for doing so. If you guys would like to be a part of my panels, if you guys would like to be on these panel discussions, please just reach out and do so. I'm trying the best I can to reach out to so many people, but so many people are so busy and whatnots. All right, so we're getting started with our panel. We got Georgie and Nick ready to go, so I'm gonna make sure that they're perked up and ready, and I do see them. SK Media, Spaghetti Kozak, along with Anna and hopefully ATP Geopolitics. Jonathan will be joining us, but we're on limited time with some of our guests, so we're going to make sure that we go ahead and get started. So let's go full screen. Let me turn on my camera for them here so they can see me. There I am. All right, let me unmute the thing. All right, Georgie and Nick, how you doing?
Doing good, thank you.
Never been better.
Never been better. So good morning, everybody, or afternoon. It's morning for West Coast. And welcome to this special panel discussing the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It was this week, but it came with a slew of nightmare events from the White House. Today, we have an incredible lineup of experts, journalists, analysts, and individuals with direct experience of the war to share their experience and how things have evolved, where we stand now, and where the future holds. So let's start off with Nick. You are a first-time panelist, so introduce yourself to everybody.
My name is Nick Soutter. I host In Time. We are an independent media program. We specialize in breaking news and covering everything that, from what's going on in the U.S. to what's going on in Europe. And we have Commander Lance McMillan, a whole bunch of others that we bring on regularly to try to bring a wider perspective on global issues. That's our goal. So, again, my name is Nick, and the show is In Time. You can find it youtube.com/In Time Show.
Thank you so much, Nick. And Georgie, wouldn't you introduce yourself in case there's some new viewers watching?
Sure. I'm Georgie, YouTuber from Ukraine Matters. I yell at camera for a living, and I'm trying to do everything that I can to make sure Ukraine wins this war and we secure our safe and prosperous future for hopefully Europe and the United States. But I guess that's the question that we're going to discuss today.
Exactly. So we aim for respectful and productive discussion. We're going to make sure both of them have time to speak, but also Anna and SK Media, if they're able to join us. And it's just going to be a nice little conversation. So let's just dive right into the topic that everyone's still reacting to and reeling from. On February 28th, there was a highly publicized and contentious meeting between U.S. President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky in the Oval Office. The discussions initially centered on a minerals agreement, but escalated into a heated exchange with President Trump accusing Zelensky of gambling with World War III and abruptly ending the talks. Okay, given this development, I'd like to open the discussion for both of you, and we'll start with we'll go with Nick and then Georgie. And these are the things I want you to think of, but of course, give your own response as you would like to. Well, how do you assess the impact of the Oval Office confrontation on Ukraine's geopolitical standing and its relations with Western allies? From a Ukrainian perspective, how is this incident being portrayed in media and public discourse? What does this reveal about the current state of U.S. foreign policy towards Ukraine? How might this diplomatic fallout influence Ukraine's military strategy and morale? And how is independent media like us addressing this development, and what reactions are you seeing from your audience regarding the U.S.-Ukraine relationship? All right, so those are just things to think of. Nick, let's start with you.
In some ways, it doesn't change a damn thing, and here's why. As soon as Trump got elected, Ukraine was going to lose support. Trump is essentially, as far as I'm concerned, a agent of Russia one way or another, whether it's deliberate or not. He surprised everybody, myself included, when he said, Ukraine really needs help. But I'm sitting there going, is that really going to last? No, it didn't. Trump has gotten millions of dollars from Deutsche Bank. The loans were underwritten by Bank of Moscow, which is controlled by Putin. So he owes Putin a huge amount of money. There's presumably compromise on him. Trump is going to, so something like this was going to happen either way. So on the larger scale, it doesn't change a whole heck of a lot. On a smaller scale, it's just the straw that broke the camel's back. We know where the U.S. stands. Europe is in a very difficult position. It reminds me of when Angela Merkel said, speaking about NATO and Europe, we are now on our own. And this is what she said during the last Trump administration. And it's going to be far worse now. Europe is on its own. I'm not pleased by that. It's extremely stupid of the United States. It's bad for everybody. And the one who's risking World War III is Trump, because if you continue on appeasement, Neville Chamberlain, we can pull him out of the grave and ask him what happens when you allow another country to just piece by piece start to take a smaller one. It does not end well. So I think we're all in big trouble, and until the U.S. grows some balls, it ain't going to change.
Thank you, Nick. Georgie?
Yeah, I want to start by saying a huge thank you for the community that you invited me here, and for the people in chat. Like, I know you're also mentioning that that you're buying stuff from my shop. Just please know that everything is going to be one way or another going to support Ukraine. We're going to be rolling out many projects very soon, and you will see for yourself.
I have to interrupt. I'm sorry. I just realized I didn't say thank you. I didn't say thank you for bringing me on. Oh, no.
Have you said thank you?
No, I didn't. I didn't. I'm sorry.
That's the last panel for you, Bucko. The last one. Anyways, Georgie, your merch and how it supports Ukraine.
Yes. We're going to be rolling out many projects. Like, I know, guys, because a lot of questions people ask, like Georgie, like, do you send money to Ukraine and so on? So I just want to make sure that everything is coming and you will see it for yourself. It's going to be nice. In the answering of the question, now there was a lot of you said of the question, so I can answer it for an hour. But I think the core thing, and I'm going to reference this is in meta because there's been analysis done everywhere. Like every single media representative and his dog has done an analysis on the situation. And the biggest flaw in what a lot of the analysis are making is specifically what Nick has been underscoring, is that this is not happening in a vacuum. That it is not like Zelensky just arrived to Trump's administration. It was like all good and willing, and they were trying to negotiate in good faith and like sign this agreement and transition towards the brighter future for Ukraine, and that it will just absolutely is going to end the war, and there's going to be mineral agreement, and everyone's going to be so much winning. And in reality, that was absolutely not the case. We saw what the election of Trump meant. Everything was written on the wall. There has been like a consecutive chain of actions, statements, insults, walking behind Ukraine's back to negotiate specifically with Russia, first stating that it wasn't really biting with anything, but then stating that it's the Zelensky that doesn't want to be signing the agreement, that he just needs to shut up and just sign an agreement. And all of it boils down to the fact that Trump's just see Ukraine as basically nothing more than a shithole country that he owns, like as what's stated by what some of the MAGA media says, like, we are the United States, we own your ass, bow down and do what we fucking say. And that is basically the whole boiled down to. There was no specific goodwill. You can say maybe Zelensky could have done something better and so on. I've heard the analysis. I think it's a load of crap, because if it's a setup, if JD Vance was just sitting there waiting and trying to find the moment to pounce on, like when Zelensky and his maybe English wasn't the best, when it looked not the best, and just try to put pressure Zelensky and put him in a bad light, that is not productive negotiations. That is not some kind of goodwill setup. It was an absolute setup. It was an absolute trap. And I think the biggest mistake that everyone is making is just thinking that this is just something that just kind of happened, and Zelensky should be potentially going to negotiate something. And sorry, negotiate what? Because if Ukraine wants to surrender, they don't need services from the White House. They can do that themselves, and they won't.
And for both of you, and we'll go with Nick and then Georgie again, the deal was minerals, right, to the United States, but they didn't have any level of security guarantees, which is the whole point of Ukraine defending themselves. They need things that are going to allow them to continue to defend themselves if the Russians attack, which they've only proven that they're going to continue to. Nick, what do you think?
I think Zelensky should not have called the vice president JD. I think that was silly. He shouldn't have done it. Okay, faux pas. That's not what started it. What started it was when he started pointing out the history of how many times either a ceasefire deal or an actual, like Budapest Accords, have been violated, where Budapest Accords was signed by Putin himself, saying we recognize all of Ukraine, including Crimea. We will never invade, yada, yada, yada. And so after, I think it was Vance who said, look, we're offering you this great deal in a ceasefire. They are not offering a ceasefire. What they're offering is a delayed execution. They're like, tell you what, we will give you give us half your minerals. We will give you 3 years before you're wiped off the face of the planet, versus it happening like pretty much in a couple of months if we just pull out all aid. That's all they're offering, and was pointing that out. He's like, here's how many times it's been broken. He is not offering a choice between war and peace. Peace is not on the table. What he was offering was a choice between annihilation right now or annihilation in 3 years. And I don't think Zelensky is under any obligation to be thankful for that.
Exactly, Georgie.
Yeah, as I said, like I fully dismiss any kind of saying that Zelensky shouldn't call GD something and so on, because if they approach this whole thing in bad faith, then it doesn't matter if you called him or something, there would be something else. So it's more about like, well, okay, so he used the first name. Is it really like such a big offense? It's like, of course not. Like it's more about like they wanted to take offense, so they did, and they made sure that it's public. And it's absolutely clear that there is no good kind of deal on the table. There is nothing. Whatever was proposed, like this mineral deal and so on, like it was basically watered down by the good work with Zelensky to be just a framework agreement that would not actually allow for, to be honest, anything to happen. It was just like a general goodwill statement stating like, well, in US, we can potentially invest in Ukraine, and in US can potentially invest and we can do something like this. It was a great propaganda thing that Trump can just like show and wave it in the air and say, this is, we achieved, we're going to get all our money back, we're going to be so big and glorious. In reality, that deal has been watered down by the Zelensky team, and it was great. And I think there was like this accumulated frustration on the Trump's team and so on, that Zelensky is just not doing their bidding. And I think this is where it boils down to. And so agreements that it's supposed to be some kind of a agreement without security guarantees. What's the point of that agreement? Trump says like, trust me, bro, Putin's definitely going to attack you. Well, it's like, well, you're saying that, but we had the deals with him before, and then he did it anyway. Also, supposedly the deal that Trump is proposing and what they're saying is like, just give what Russia wants. Not a single one of these motherfuckers have answered the question, what will be the Russian concessions? Remember, coming into this meeting, there has been numerous interviews, there has been numerous questions saying, is like, what will be the things that Russia will have to give in order to achieve agreement? And the reality of this is that Trump said, I'm going to solve this in a day. He tried going like to the Russians. Russians said, well, thank you for coming. We want everything. And Trump is like, well, I don't have leverage over them. Well, I'm going to go try to do it the same with Ukrainians. Let's push it to Ukrainians. And Ukrainians said that they will not be pushed again. And now basically they're like sitting in their room, realizing they have the absolutely zero leverage on anything. And there's like, what do we do? Well, we have two options here. We have the Russians that we have no leverage in, and then we have some leverage on Zelensky. Let's push Zelensky. Let's try to water it all down. Let's maybe create a situation. Then we can just say it's all Zelensky's fault that he doesn't want to peace. We need a better person in the White House. That's what they're saying right now. We need a different person in Ukraine to be the leader so he can sign off the whole Ukraine. It's a colonization effort. It's shit.
Yeah, it's absolute. It's terrible. SK Media, Spaghetti Kozak just joined us. I don't know if you have your mic hooked up, buddy. If you're there. You there, SK?
The mic should be working. Am I coming through okay?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. All right, Spaghetti Kozak, why don't you just introduce yourself to the stream and to the panelists?
Yeah, so my name is James. SK Media is my Twitter name and YouTube channel. Normally, I started the YouTube channel as just kind of a side gig to talk about old movies and video games and stuff like that. And then history had to come in and make my life more complicated. I do have a long history in Ukraine, and for that reason, I was actually doing volunteer work even before the full-scale invasion. I'd been there in Donbass also as a journalist in 2015, and so when it all kicked off, I just couldn't sit it out. Ended up enlisting in the Ukrainian Armed Forces, served from the spring of 2022 until just a few days ago. So it was a little over 2.5 years. Just finished up 6 months on the Pokrovsk direction with the 25th Airborne Brigade. And just got back to Kyiv a couple days ago, and just sort of adjusting to normal life and living in a city and going to the bathroom indoors and not in a backyard somewhere in the freezing cold. But yeah, so I take it my mic is coming through okay. There's a little bit of confusion because I thought it was a Monday stream and not Sunday, but so I actually sort of ran back from the metro stop to get here and drop in. So I take it we're discussing the recent news, aren't we?
Yeah, we're discussing right now, just going through the Oval Office meeting and reactions to it. If you have one, I'm sure you do.
Oh yeah, so I am not a doomer, and for those of you who follow me on Twitter or Blue Sky, like I don't panic. I just kind of go with things. I don't get intimidated easily. I've been shot at and shelled, so it's hard for this stuff to upset me too much. What did happen was an absolute clown show. I remember seeing about it. It's almost like when there's a big event like a terrorist attack or something going down, and you're seeing tweets, you haven't been on Twitter in a while, and you go back and you see all your friends are saying, oh, wow, this is really bad. And one person, a good friend of mine, was saying, like, I just can't watch this anymore. And I'm like, oh, dear, I better have a look at what this is. And I watched it, and this was just basically self-humiliation by the White House. One thing I found that really stuck out to me was the fact that Vance was there, and Vance seemed to be more the initiator or aggressor. And I think it's interesting that they wouldn't let Trump meet alone with Zelensky, because I believe in Zelensky's ability to work with Trump. He's met with him one-on-one before, and he knows, being a TV guy, I think he knows how to reach him. And I think that basically the foreign-backed forces that are occupying Washington now, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and Vance, their buddy there, I think they have become aware of this as well. And they understand that Trump needs a minder when he's with Zelensky. And that was Vance in this case. And actually, I mean, you notice that Trump doesn't do a lot of press conferences or interviews by himself these days. He always has a minder there. It's either Elon Musk, the ketamine boy, or in this case, it was Vance. And they're a reminder to make sure that he toes the party line. Like, he just cannot be trusted on his own anymore. And Vance, he just came off sounding like, I mean, I don't know how family friendly your show is, but Vance is.
It's for adults. It's for adults.
Okay, I'm sorry, but Vance is an eyeliner wearing bitch. And I'm not saying that just like as a flippant insult. Like, everything about the man is fake. And he came off as like this angry Karen. Like an angry Karen wants to see the manager of Ukraine when, when Zelensky was pointing out, like, what makes Russia stick to the deal? What's to stop them from attacking again? And that's when he's like, well, have you once said thank you? And that's what someone says when they basically been stomped on. Their argument basically got shot down. He's got nothing he can say, so he comes up with something like that. And I just want to point out, just to reiterate, I obviously just dropped in, but I caught a little bit of what Mr. Nort was saying earlier about compromises, and when we talk about security guarantees and what stops them from coming back. Ever since you started hearing pundits and people in the media, who never support Russia, of course, but just want peace, I say always ask the two magic questions, and I have this in the first part of my my big video on dumbest arguments about the war in Ukraine. Always ask the two magic questions. First question, they talk about compromise. Oh, both sides aren't going to be happy. We need a compromise, right? Okay, fine. Tell me what Russia gives up. Is that difficult? We're going to talk about what Ukraine gives up, obviously. Like, they're very ready to talk about what Ukraine needs to sacrifice, but none of these people can tell me what Russia gives up. And then that leads us to the second point. If the answer is like, oh, well, Russia just stops the war, they stop attacking. Okay, and what if they attack again? What happens then? Because, we've already been through this before. Right. After the Minsk II agreement, Minsk II is basically a wink-wink deal with Russia to say, okay, yeah, we're not going to reverse the status quo. Many countries like the United States, Germany were flat out refusing any lethal aid to Ukraine. They were not going to support any kind of efforts to retake those territories. So it's just this wink-wink deal where it's like, okay, we'll say we don't recognize that. We recognize Ukrainian territorial integrity. And we're just going to let Russia take land, basically. And we did that. And did that satisfy them? No. They just kept coming, and they will do the exact same thing. They need a breather for their forces. They obviously need to reorganize, and they need to, they have learned from their experience, but they need more time to assimilate that experience and then recruit more guys, and then they're just going to push again, because that is what they do. It's what they've done every time. And so all these people are like, well, we can't risk World War III. We can't risk nuclear war. Okay, you don't want to risk nuclear war. What happens when we do what you say, and we give them something they want, because compromise, right? And they break that agreement. Does that mean all these people from Code Pink and, Tulsi Gabbard, all these people, are they going to say, okay, that's it. Russia crossed the line. We're going to risk nuclear war. We're going to war with Russia. Of course, they were never going to say that. The whole thing is bullshit. Yep. Yeah, I'll tell you this. It is actually almost worse than what you hear from actual pro-Russian people or Russians that support their government. When they talk about this, because all these people try to phrase it as, I care about Ukrainian lives. And then you ask them, okay, what guarantees the human rights of the Ukrainians trapped in occupied territory? and they have nothing to say. And that's why, and that's the thing, as a journalist, anyone who is a journalist who interviews a person talking about peace, compromise, whatever, first question out of your mouth needs to be, what does Russia give up? If they don't have an answer to that, end the interview. Walk out. You know, have some balls or ovaries if you're the woman persuasion, and just walk out. End the interview, because this person is just wasting your time.
Exactly.
This is also, this is the third country they've invaded in 10 years. So the next question is, what's the next country? Where's the line? And the line just keeps being moved back. This is Czechoslovakia. This is it's the exact same thing. This is gambling World War III.
If you were to speak about Georgia, for example, right? Most people pretty much ignored Georgia after 2008. However, there has been an effort for years to basically move the border of Russia's occupied territory in Georgia, move it to the Georgian side. They have been slowly moving, like physically moving the border, the fencing and everything into the Georgian territory, to the point where people are waking up and their house is now in South Ossetia, which is under control by Russia, for example, or it's in Abkhazia, right? And they've been doing this the whole time. So we have seen zero evidence that Russia just really wants peace with the West, and we're pushing them. And here's the thing. I also say this about most of the experts that you see out there. They don't have a special magical power that I possess, and that is called the ability to speak Russian. See, when you speak Russian and you listen to what Russians say when they don't think any dumb foreigners are listening to them, when they think it's between them, you will learn a lot of interesting things about what they actually believe and what their goals are. And the fact is that they want war. They need war, because it's the only thing that basically, as they see, will keep will alleviate the pressure. Because Russia's society is basically run by these insanely rich oligarchs, and the wealth inequality in Russia is staggering, all in spite of the massive natural resource wealth that this country has. It certainly has technically proficient people. It has very creative and innovative people, but those people basically are only able to do anything insofar as they are useful to the system. And so the Russian government understands very well, especially now, is that the best way that they can keep in power is to use the excuse of war to crack down even further than they did in the past in terms of free speech and human rights, and also to basically just get rid of a lot of people they consider trash. There are a lot of people the Russian government would rather not exist. Some of them are simply human trash, like the Gopnik type people, right? But then there are also minorities in Russia that the Muscovites don't like so much, and if there's a way they can Russify them by getting their men killed in another country, from their point of view, so much the better.
Exactly. And Georgie, so immediately after the Oval Office meeting, we saw a wave of European leaders and foreign leaders support Zelensky. He's in the United Kingdom. He just got I think a 2.6 billion or around that number aid from the United Kingdom. What happens next now? Is Europe going to, do you think Europe's going to be stepping up? And we'll ask all of you, do you think Europe's going to stand up and provide more? Are they going to put troops in Ukraine? What do you think happens next?
Well, I really wish I could say that, it's going to be now like Europe all the way, but like, I'm not seeing good signs, unfortunately. Like I already said last time, because we've kind of like checked in like how much Europe needs to contribute to their defenses, and I'm not even saying like they need to contribute to Ukraine, how much they need to contribute to their defenses in order to really start making a difference, and that's something around like 300 billions per year. So that's additionally. So if there is not going to be like right now, like okay, we need to increase like 300 billions this year, actually, maybe 300 billions also next year, and then maybe like get it all the way up to like 4% average. If that is not happening, and that is like, and I need to explain this, that is because of the price of production and investment returns. So because in Russia, like things are so much cheaper, so like $1 in Russia can buy much more than it can buy in Europe, because we have such an insane overhead. For us, production of shells, like compared to EU to Ukraine, is about 4 times more expensive. That's why investing in Ukraine is so much better, just because bang for the buck. And that's the same kind of logic applies here, that yes, we in Europe kind of invest in defense and our budget is also bigger, but we also get a lot less from that budget, whereas Russia is getting a lot more. So if we are considering that we should be like a real power that just can overshadow what US is doing and take things on our own, we're talking about 300 billion investment per year. Right now, I'm hearing maybe we're gonna, like United Kingdom said, maybe we're gonna invest additional 5 billion, something like within the next couple of years. There is a discussion that the United Kingdom, until I believe 2030, they're going to get their average to 2.5% of defense spending. And in generally, the signs that we're saying right now, Starmer coming out of that meeting, is like, okay, we're going to try building some kind of coalition of the willing. Well, if there is not a full agreement, that's when you build a coalition of the willing. So even in that meeting where supposedly all Ukrainians' friends have gathered with Zelensky and everyone was just jerking off to each other, trying to show who is the better friend to Zelensky, there's still supposedly no further agreement about how much they should contribute, how unified those efforts should be, what's the amount of those efforts. I'm expecting, for example, Italy, big supporter of Ukraine politically, but they really don't want to invest in their defense. And that's the state of things that we are right now, that there is a lot of very strong words, but the actions have been a bit garbage. And despite the seriousness of the situation, I still see that a lot of the European politicians are still scared, looking over their shoulders and hoping for a glorious United States to ride on that big winged horse and stuck their dick up their asses just so they can get things done. Because what Trump is basically putting the Europe beforehand is saying is like, this is your issue, you need to solve it, and then come to us once that issue is solved, and then we're going to continue protecting you, so to say. Whereas the Europeans are like, well, can we spend like kind of less and just like try to convince the United States to use their resources and come and solve our shit instead of us? And I don't know if it's change of government that is needed, if change the political will is needed, but it is still extremely prevalent in a lot of the statements that I'm hearing, even after so serious, supposedly, of a high-level meeting from the United Kingdom's press conferences.
Thank you, for, Georgie. Let's go, Nick, and then SK.
I'm still trying to get over Georgie's imagery there.
It was an accurate depiction.
I very much agree with Georgie and what he said. I think the problem is Europe has seen this kind of thing before where the U.S. really hasn't. The U.S. is isolated by two oceans. We can get away with an isolationist mindset a lot easier than European nations can. So I think we don't have this same sense of panic that you're seeing in Europe. Having said that, I don't think that the European people have the will to step up, even where some of their leaders may, and those leaders need to get elected. Those leaders need to. So I don't see them stepping up as much as I don't see a practical plan that is going to work that can be implemented at this point in Europe. I think Georgie's right. They're hoping that there's going to be a leadership change, possibly. I mean, the other thing is, okay, look, is there a way to make it so that Ukraine can hold out for 4 years until somebody else comes in? That's one hell of a bet, and that's assuming that Trump doesn't get his third term, which it sounds like a joke. He can't do it constitutionally. There's a shit ton he can't do constitutionally.
He's done it
away with anyway.
Yeah.
So I think every other country on the planet, including Canada and Mexico, have to say that the U.S. is out of the equation so long as Trump or anyone thereby associated is in power in the U.S. and they're on their own. And it's not how I want it, but it's the reality.
Exactly. Spaghetti?
Well, I mean, when we talk about Europe, we're talking about a lot of different countries and some with very, very different politicians in power. Obviously, like on one end of the spectrum, you have, I think, the people who know this best are the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland comes in there. But then you got like the opposite end of the spectrum. You got Hungary, and right now you got the government in Slovakia, which is kind of being a thorn in the side as well. And so I see that is probably the most complicated thing when you speak about Europe is that despite the European Union, these are still sovereign countries with very different politics and different interests, and that's always going to be a problem. What I would say I think is going on is the biggest problem is what they call the normalcy bias, and the idea that like everything is fine, like it doesn't, something seems wrong, but I don't want to panic, I don't want to look panicky or whatever, and it's just like many Americans who, when these kind of things happen, like we were talking about constitutional issues and a third term, it's that type of thing where there were many people who were saying before January 20th, 2021, that look, President Trump, he may say he doesn't expect or he doesn't accept the election results, but on January 20th, he's going to leave, he's going to accept it, he's going to go. And what happened on January 6th, right? So people just say, like, it can't happen here, and then it happens. And I would say that when you look at it that way, maybe Trump's egregious ass-kissing of Russia may turn out to be a positive thing because it's so egregious that it's not like boiling the frog, right? Like if he had just been, because initially, I'll be honest, when he got inaugurated, some of the first stuff he was saying about Ukraine is like, okay, he can go either way. And the reason for this is because even though I know that Trump definitely has an affinity for Russia and for Putin, I don't believe the blackmail nonsense or anything like that. I think he just genuinely likes Putin and his style, and he wants that kind of system in the U.S. But I understand that politics are a complicated thing. No man rules alone. And there are many interests at work there. And so Trump, of course, like he has a lot of ties to the fossil fuel industry. They have reasons to want to fuck Russia. He certainly has some ties to the defense industry. They obviously have their interest in this as well. So what Trump was saying was kind of going back and forth. He wasn't really saying what he needed to say, what he easily could have said, which is to actually take a hard line against Russia and Putin. But he wasn't where he's been this last week and what just happened now, right? And so if there was a case where actual European leaders were looking at this and saying, well, he blusters a lot, he's a showman, maybe he's just doing this for his base. If they were doing that for a while, I think after what just happened in the White House, they're starting to realize that it's real now. He really is that. America really is surrendering to Russia, and we are going to be on our own. So there's a lot of jokes about Europeans saying this is a wake-up call for Europe, this is a wake-up call for Europe, but this may actually be a real wake-up call. And if that's what it takes, then who knows? But like I said, we're dealing with a lot of different countries, a lot of different governments, all having elections at their regular scheduled times, depending on what their situation is. And so I'm not going to write off Europe. I do think there are countries and governments there who actually do want to step up. And it's going to be kind of nice if they can step up and not have America trying to hold them back, because we had the situation with allegedly I think it was the Scalp and Storm Shadow missiles were supposedly limited in their use because even though they are French and British, the U.S. manufactures some of the parts for those. So it will allow European leaders who are willing, who want to slip that leash, now they can. So we'll see in that case.
Do you guys think, and we can start with Georgie, Nick, and SK again, do you guys think that European leaders, do you think they'll start defying Trump openly? Do you think that is a move they should be making? Or what do you think European leaders that aren't meeting the moment, what do you think they should be doing? Let's start with Georgie.
No, I don't think they should be starting. Like, I think European leaders and like pushing to talk with Trump and suggesting that Zelensky should try to meet up with Trump and trying to and so on. Because look, the best thing that we can expect Trump is for Trump not to cut the existing support for Ukraine. And I think that is potentially an achievable goal. So the fact that the United States is no longer our friend, I think is, by this point, I am hoping is finally clear to everyone. But it doesn't mean that there is no kind of good things that we can still kind of push, maybe slow down some of the destructive forces that are acting on this. So I think there is a space for diplomacy. This is the same thing that that Macron did with trying to call Putin and so on. But there needs to be an understanding, and there needs to be an understanding that we are doing this specifically to slow down the decomposition of the United States, and maybe, just maybe, there is a potential for turnover. The absolutely different is like having that as a primary position, saying is like, okay, if we do not right now turn the United States to our side, then we're going to be completely screwed because we have nothing and we actually don't invest in nothing and so on. And maybe we're going to do something a little bit on the side. That is the destructive position. The problem that it's very hard to see the difference between the two. And as I think that Spaghetti Kozak here stated very, very nicely, is that there are already countries that understood this. The Nordic Baltic 8 is great example of that. Like there has been a huge increase in the contribution and understanding of their defenses. My hope is Norway is going to be participating more, because Norway is, well, arguably the richest country in the world, and there's a lot of things that can be done. Poland, Germany. If those two countries come to an agreement, there needs to be significant investment into their defenses. And what we've hearing right now from Friedrich Merz, that is encouraging, but those are words for now. So we need to see the actions. So basically, there are these two positions, and we need to try to get US on our side needs to be the secondary one. If that doesn't happen, then I think we're a bit screwed.
Nick?
U.S. isn't going to be on anybody's side, and I think everybody needs to recognize that as soon as possible. It's horrible. I think the U.S. has benefited hugely from working with its partners everywhere on the planet, and I think the free trade is the best way to get peace across the planet, and the U.S. has benefited from that, and we have a president who doesn't understand that. The way Trump works is he doesn't care about any kind of victory. He doesn't care about improving anything. What he cares about is perception. That's it. He slapped tariffs on Canada. Canada said, well, we were already going to make these improvements on the border, so how about we make these improvements that we were already going to do? And he said, great, they're making improvements that I told them to do, and boom, he's got a victory. That's all he really cares about. I think every country on this planet needs to start taking everything he says 100% seriously. If he says, I'm gonna put tariffs on the EU, boom, slaps him with tariffs right off the bat. Hit him first. And then he says, what the hell was that about? Well, you said you were going to hit us, so we're just hitting you first. Treat him like he treats everybody else. Treat him like the schoolyard bully, and treat him like a bad dog. Whap him on the nose as many times as you can until he gets it right. I don't think there is any other way to deal with it. I think until the U.S. feels the pain of this idea that we're the greatest country in the world and everybody has to bend the knee, until we feel the pain of what that really feels like, there isn't going to be a change, and there's no reason to change. So, I'm an American. I hate saying all of that. That's the only reality that I see.
Spaghetti?
Yeah, I have to back that up. I want to say, look at our government dog. Like, we are going to become a third world country because a big problem we have as Americans is the incuriosity and the lack of knowledge about the outside world. And
Jesus.
I mean, we have many people who, through no fault of their own, never had a passport, and most people get their ideas about the world from pop culture, and this is a huge problem. And they don't understand that, we are taught in school about how great America is, but we don't understand that what Americans enjoy in terms of peace and freedom, security, prosperity, and all these things. These are all based on America's standing in the world. It's all based on the connections we have, and especially the fact that after World War II, especially after the Cold War, because we did do a lot of nasty stuff in the Cold War, as our opponents did as well, but we had this wonderful situation where we have such great soft power. It is so beneficial for countries to be on our side because of investment, because of their trade with us, and our culture, our soft power is just, it's incredible how even in countries that supposedly hate us, even in Russia, right? Russia, they talk about how degenerate American culture is, but you know what? They got a bunch of Russian rappers. They can't refuse the music that America invented, whether it was rock and roll or you all the way back to the 20s, and it was jazz, right? And we got to understand it. Like, for one thing, like, we fight fewer wars because we don't have to. Because other countries, it's not that they don't go to war with us because our military will crush them. It's because why would you? Like, why would, even if they had a better military, why would you want to go to war with the U.S. when you can just trade with us and get our investment, right? And people don't understand that. You got a lot of people, there's a lot of phrases I like to call things that sound smart to stupid people in the U.S. And one of these things is a lot of, this used to be kind of popular in certain political circles where they'd say, well, remember when George Washington said, do not get involved in foreign entanglements. It's bad, right? And they try to say this is about NATO and everything. Really, he was talking about the French and Indian Wars, an offshoot of the 7 Years' War. But here's the thing. I mean, right after the country was independent, we learned an interesting fact, which is that we had no Navy, so nobody was protecting our merchant vessels. And guess what? Suddenly in the Mediterranean, there's these very rich trade vessels that don't have anyone protecting them, unlike the British ones and the French ones. And so we ended up in our first war in North Africa, basically, over there, because as it turns out, our prosperity is based largely in things like trade. And I keep, we talk about the World War II analogy. How much easier would that war have gone had America from the beginning, from even 1938, said, you know what, this guy's definitely going to war. We need to make it clear that if anyone starts a war in Europe or the Pacific, America is going to be a part of it and they're going to stop them. And if we started ramping up our production then, if you understand what our production was like during World War II, when we had a point where like every 30 minutes or so, a Willys Jeep would roll off the line ready to go, that's the kind of production we had. If we had been doing that in 1938, 1939, things would have gone a lot differently and a lot of lives would have been saved. And again, another example I like to give is if you follow the actual history of our involvement in Afghanistan during the Soviet occupation there. In '89, when the Soviets left, the U.S. attitude was like, okay, we won, deal, everything's done, turn out the lights. And we just figured we don't really need to care what happens about Afghanistan. It's just this little landlocked state there. Who cares? And they literally pretty much ignored it, even though even the communist regime would still survive until 1992. But we just did not care. We beat the Soviets. And we just let that basically fester. It collapsed in the Civil War. And, sooner or later, suddenly the New York City skyline looks different. And then we get involved in a 20-year war that ends up costing us trillions, right? And I will say, rarely I talked about learning stuff from pop culture. Usually you shouldn't, but I was very impressed that if you ever watch the movie Charlie Wilson's War, there is a little scene near the end where they're talking about maybe we should fund this school. They need schools. They need basic infrastructure, right? And the answer was we don't care anymore. It's done. It's over. The Soviets are humiliated, right? And that is it's pretty accurate representation of the attitude at the time, and that affected us on U.S. soil. And as I said, again, 20-year war. What did we get out of it, and what did we spend on that? Right? What happened to the soul of our country in that 20 years? Right? This is where it got us. So, yeah. So I agree with Nick that some people need to learn. Right? You tell someone the stove is hot multiple times, and then the stove can talk, and it says, "I'm hot. Don't touch me," and they're like, you know what? I think I'm going to touch that stove. Yeah. So what can you do?
I do want to address a brief comment. Somebody said it's just Trump and it's not Americans. I wish that were true. It's about it's less than half of Americans, because less than half of Americans are MAGA, but it was enough Americans to elect Trump.
Exactly.
So that's something you can't ignore. I appreciate people trying to let us off the hook, and I appreciate people recognizing that there are Americans who think that Trump is in fact an existential threat to the United States. But having said that, there were enough people to elect him. For whatever reason, there just were. So.
Yeah, exactly. Or you have the other side where people that support Trump are like, wow, you're like criticizing us and that hurts our feelings and you got to stop doing that. That means you hate America. And it's like, bro, you can't have it both ways. Like when we make bad decisions, we're going to get criticized for it. And we should. Like you should. So facts don't care about your feelings. So I don't know what you want. Let's start with SK.
Can I quickly just comment on that?
Yep.
I'm just going to say the same that I have been saying to the Russian oppositionists for a first time. Like the absolute weirdest and potentially worst thing one can do is to say that they are not us, like, because that's what the Russian opposition have been saying nonstop, stating like that these are like not real Russians. Like, we are the real Russians, and there's like real Russians that are actually believing, instead of reflecting on what's happening and how we got there, and like saying it's like, no, this is us. This is our country. This is our people. This is what our people turn to. Because in my perspective, that's the only way to recognize that, like, where Russians, for example, have come, and to start reflecting on what led, like, for half of the people, their people, to come to this understanding. And I feel that I am getting closer and closer to saying the same to the people in the United States, stating that's like, it's like MAGA is not us, like the Trumpists are not us. I believe kind of it betrays the whole point that United States has gotten into the situation, and there needs to be also some kind of a soul searching within the US society, and just stating is like, well, they're just not us, therefore we completely wash our hands. Well, I think that's a bit of a taking a cop out.
We will never fix the problem that way. You'll never fix the problem if you don't admit that the problem is our culture permitted this and thought it was okay in the first place, and we have to figure out how we got there.
Yep, and I'm telling you, just to all three of you and my viewers, because people are also in the chat, like, you can't just complain and do nothing. Americans are doing a bunch. All right, now more will join, but there already is. Like, tune in Tuesday. That's all I gotta say. Tune in on Tuesday to Mercado Media and see what U.S. state capitals look like. All right, but also there have been a bunch of Ukrainian rallies this weekend. Like, Chicago had a giant one outside of Trump Tower. I mean, and I bet you there'll be a lot of Ukrainian flags at these protests. Speaking of, and usually also to viewers, everybody, I try to have Ukrainians on my panels every time speaking about Ukrainian issues. Unfortunately, all the panelists I reach out to are busy. It's a Sunday. So we'll start with SK Media and then Georgie. SK Media, again, thank you so much for your service too, by the way, for Ukraine and everything that you've done for the armed forces and the protection of Ukraine. You, like you said, you just came off of the front lines. What is the feeling of the soldiers? What is the feeling of the Ukrainian people right now after this weekend? Is there a wave of resilience? What are you seeing and what are you feeling on the ground in Ukraine?
Well, it's kind of funny. So when the election happened on election night, obviously it takes us a long time to see the results because, the time difference, right? We're like 8 hours ahead of you or something. So it takes us a while to actually see the really reliable projected results. And I remember I was on position at the time. So in case people don't understand, because I got a lot of people are like, well, how do you tweet if you're in a war? It's like, well, guess what? I am a FPV drone pilot. We have constant internet access, and we are trapped in a basement for minimum 3 days at a time. Like, you can't go out for a walk, you can't, there's not a lot you can do. So if you are not actually flying or doing some of the other minor tasks you have, everyone's on their phone. And so I was looking at the results. They were seeing the results, and two of the guys there, because I was working with an all-Ukrainian crew, and these guys, they're like, well, so are we basically fucked now? And it's like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. Like, it's just, there's a lot of people here, they have deadpan humor and the dark humor. Like, you think dark humor, but here it is the darkest.
Brutal.
And,
it's brutal.
Yeah, and
so good.
And yeah, and the thing is that the people here, like, are they upset or are they concerned, worried? Yes, right. But the fact is that people just keep doing what they're doing. Sometimes that normalcy bias is actually a useful thing, and this is when it is useful, is when people just keep going to work, keep donating their money. Many Ukrainians, a lot of people don't understand when they talk about, my tax dollars. Well, I mean, apart from the reality of what that U.S. aid is, a lot of people forget that everyday Ukrainians are often regularly donating a portion of their salary to the military. They're donating their time, they're donating their money, they're donating stuff they don't need anymore. This is propping up the war effort. These people are doing as much as they can on their own. And so, it's funny after my favorite, I'm not, it's never good when you have to explain a meme to somebody. It always ruins a joke. But I remember just the day after what happened in the Oval Office, the Ukrainians are already making memes about it, where they were, in case for anyone who doesn't know, Volodymyr Zelensky, he did the Ukrainian dub for both Paddington Bear movies. So occasionally, yes, he did. So occasionally when you see memes made by Ukrainians about him, it'll be Paddington Bear from the movie. And there were two memes that it came out with a still shot of Paddington Bear from the movie, and he's basically saying in Ukrainian, kind of the best translation would be like, shut your fucking face. And then another one was him saying, hey, sorry if I fucked you, or something like that. So that's kind of their attitude towards that. It's very funny because earlier, you were speaking about the sensitivity of some people. It's very funny how the whole fuck your feelings crowd gets super sensitive about, Zelensky wasn't wearing a suit and he was being very rude and he didn't say thank you. He said it 33 times, but why
please and thank you, Mr. Zelensky.
Yeah,
Good child.
It's tragic because I'm just a masculine alpha male, and I see this rudeness and lack of decorum. So that's the general attitude of Ukrainians is just kind of like, I mean, you'll see this anywhere in Ukrainian society. There are all kinds of just references to what's going on, and people will continue to fight. I mean, the idea, people who think that, if the U.S. cuts aid, no, that's. I mean, you got so many people on Twitter saying like, your paycheck is cut now and it's over. It's like, tell that to the Russians we kill every day. Like, I really wish I could connect these people to the families of the Russians my crew was killing out there. Just tell those guys, I'll translate for you how the war's over and Russia won. I'm sure they're enjoying their death payments from their useless abusive husband. But
exactly. Well, thank you, SK Media. Georgie, Nick, you guys both cover the war every day. Georgie, you're very connected to Ukraine. Ukraine Matters YouTube channel. What are you hearing? What are the Ukrainians that are connected to you saying?
No, obviously there is a huge rally around the flag around Zelensky right now. Like even the people that absolutely hate his guts never voted for him. Like he thinks that the guy is just selling them out and just like please leave, let Poroshenko come. A lot of these guys, even they are saying is like, it's like I respect for what he did, because like everyone saw that Trump basically acted like a bully. It's pretty single-minded. Like obviously there are like some discussions like, could we actually done something and so on. But as I said at the start of this video, I don't think that in reality there was anything. But generally speaking, there is a huge support for Zelensky, a huge rally around the flag effect. It's very needed right now in Ukraine, because things are going to get difficult. Like U.S. help, it's not something that we should be just disregarded like this is nothing. It's going to be felt in Ukrainian front lines. But in general, people say, we'll fight on. Let's keep on chugging along. And I think a lot of the people, especially on the I'm thinking like how much I can say. People that are trying to solve actual issues to help Ukraine in the background, not the political ones, but just actual ones. They are basically stating, okay, how can we get more things going on here in Ukraine? Because the truth of the matter, like people say, like what can Ukraine, what can everyone do? Like Europe has only money and nothing else. Well, the truth of the matter is that in Ukraine, only about a third of capacity for their defense industry is loaded. Like there's only about just over like 30, I believe it's 6% or something. Like that's the load of the Ukrainian capacity, Ukrainian industry. So if there is enough financing, if there is enough supplies of resources and everything, Ukrainian industry can pump out a lot more. And that's why the question is like, well, will there be investment? Will there be more companies? Like right now, that talks about using the Danish model to invest in the Ukrainian production, make orders in the Ukrainian production, are in millions. It needs to start getting into the billions very fast.
And thank you, Georgie. Before we introduce JP, let's get Nick's response.
There's a meme that I saw that I really like. It said in the White House that day, there was one man without a suit and two suits without men. I think that Zelensky is going to see a huge bounce in his own poll numbers from this. I think I've constantly said that he most reminds me of Churchill, to be quite honest. And I'm not. That's not an exaggeration. I'm fully aware of Churchill's many accomplishments, including a Nobel Prize in literature of all things. So Zelensky was in there, and when people get heated with you, your natural instinct is to get heated back. He was calm. He answered what their questions with facts. He then asked them, he goes, okay, well, let me ask you this question. What do you think peace looks like? And JD Vance just became unhinged because he couldn't answer the fundamental question, which is, okay, we have all this evidence that he's going to break his deal with us. He's broken so many before. How are you going to stop him? And Trump's only thing was, well, I wasn't there for those deals. Well, yeah, those deals, a different person was there every time. This isn't. So I think he showed genuine leadership. I think that he's going to get a bounce in Europe and from his own people from this. From his own people, I think it's going to last a while. Europe, we've already talked about. It's going to be per country, and it's going to be based on what they're willing to do and how seriously they take this as a genuine 1930s Czechoslovakia incident. But I thought it was he again, one or two minor decorum issues. Yeah, I noticed it too. It happens. Oops, sorry. It's not something that grown men throw a tantrum over.
Right. And we have an amazing panelist that just joined us, Johnny Pierce from ATP Geopolitics. Johnny, before I ask you some questions, just introduce yourself to any new viewers that might be watching.
Hello, I'm Jonathan M.S. Pierce from ATP Geopolitics. I've been reporting on this war since the beginning of the war, really, in one form or another. And I now produced copious videos a day. And I've just got off the back of recording a 1.5-hour geopolitical update to what the heck has been happening today. And that's on the back of just my earlier videos today of what the heck happened in the White House, which was on the back of two lives I did about
something new every day, hasn't it?
It's just crazy. It's crazy times. These are the inflection points in modern history. It's going to be fascinating to see how much Europe diverged from the US, or whether they will now try and bring it back together. There's lots to talk about needing the US so much that you have to be able to get them back on side. But at the same time, the US have proved themselves to be an unreliable partner. And from an international security point of view, or a national security point of view, it becomes very difficult to be dependent upon the US from a military industrial point of view and from a technological point of view. And so therefore there needs to be some long-term planning from Europe in how they decouple technologically in terms of cloud services and all these other sort of things that people often talk about. And then that step above from, we're not producing Patriot PAC-3 missiles or the equivalent, then we need to do something about that, because ballistic missiles are a problem. How is Europe able to cope with that? Okay, SAMP-T, well, how do we ramp this up? So, sorry, there's a lot of talking, but there's a big meeting that's happened today, which is obviously super important in putting a plan in place that is going to be essentially one, and this is what Keir Starmer said, one, make sure that Ukraine are tooled up so that they can negotiate themselves into a position on the battlefield that gives them a better position at the negotiating table. 2, European peace guarantee, security guarantees. 3, American backstop security guarantees. That third point is a sticking point, and that's going to depend on how close they bring the US back in. But aside from that, Europe is going through this, right, we need to tool up. And then you've got this meeting on the 6th of March. So that's going to be super important. That's the EU coming together to say, and there are different rumors about like $700 billion euros being released, all these different financing options. And that would be kind of what you just, I think, is it Nick? Yeah, so what Nick was just talking about in terms of, okay, oh no, actually it's Georgie saying, look, there's capacity there, they just need the money. And that is something that the Ukrainians said for a long time, like we can make all this extra stuff, we just need another $10 billion. Well, actually, you're talking about 700 billion. Oh, okay, that's going to be for Europe, but there might well be enough money, but it's all about time. And so, and I'll leave you with this. The last bit of my spiel would be, there's this tension between wanting to stop the war because, you know, we want peace, and we want this just peace. And that's the difference between the American position, which is a quick peace, don't want people to die, but you seem to care more about whether someone annoys you in the White House than whether you want people. Do you know what I mean? It's like, we're going to stop this peace deal because Zelensky's not wearing a suit. It's like, well, you don't really give a shit about the peace deal then, do you? Like, honestly, like, where are your freaking priorities? So anyway, there's this tension between a just deal, a just peace, and a peace. But for a just peace to take place, you arguably need to continue fighting. And there's an awful lot of scope going forwards for the Ukrainians. If they get this money and they start getting their stuff that they've been working on in terms of ballistic missiles themselves, indigenous stuff, and stuff they're getting from abroad, if that starts coming in serious numbers to Ukraine, and actually they've got a bunch of time now where they need to be fighting to put themselves in a better position on the negotiating table. And if you cut that short now, it's like you are disadvantaging Ukraine. So they actually need to continue fighting for like another 6 months. And that seems counterintuitive to people like, well, surely you want peace. Well, actually, arguably not yet. Anyway, that's enough for me.
Oh, I actually got one more follow-up for you, Johnny, because you just joined us. Then we'll bring everybody back in
and
again.
I probably can't stay for too long.
That's okay. Georgie has to leave soon. I got you guys. Yep.
Shot by my missus.
And I appreciate all of your guys' time, and I do like that we can have these panels. Johnny, what does Europe do? What happens next? I mean, you kind of gave your take a little bit on the Oval Office. Check out Johnny's videos that are coming out on ATP Geopolitics YouTube channel about them. What does Europe do next?
So, I mean, it's all about bring America closer, bring the US closer, or not, go fully independent, or both. So I think they have realized, like I said before, that they need to invest big time. So you're going to see that. You've had some very interesting rhetoric. Today, the last 24, 48 hours has made me not proud to be British, made me really happy about the British response. So Keir Starmer is in this difficult position whereby we're economically in trouble in the UK, and we need to find loads of money to spend money on defence and other things, right? And there's this big black hole that's left by the previous government, and et cetera, et cetera. And so how do we tool up when we've got no money? And so what we need is to make sure that the US doesn't slap on tariffs on us like they're going to with the EU. And because we're now outside the EU, and he's gone over and smoothed the way with Trump, this is Keir Starmer, then you've got this dynamic where, like, oh, right, we can maybe get some economic benefit out of this relationship. But then Trump went mental in the White House with JD Vance. So how does Keir Starmer deal with that? And he was exceptionally clever, or he and his team, which is like, I'm not going to publicly come out and say that Trump is a dick, right? What I'm going to do is say that in the visuals, but actually still keep on side with Trump. And the visuals were Keir Starmer coming out of number 10. No, so first of all, Zelensky went straight to number 10, right? Kicked out the White House, went straight to number 10. That's interesting. So that says something already. Then when they meet, Keir Starmer doesn't just meet him at number 10. He goes out the door, walks down the road, hugs him really, really warmly, and says, did you like the sound of the cheering and all those people cheering on the way in? This is really cool. So I'm paraphrasing. Then brings him back in, has a meaningful conversation that was almost emotional. Then says, you know, we're going to stick by you. Says nothing about America, but says we're going to really stick by you. And then there's a meeting of the king with the king. And then when he comes out of the White, out of number 10, by the way, as well, now this is so symbolic. Zelensky was kicked out of the White House. Zelensky left number 10 with Keir Starmer, walked down the road to his car. He walked into his car, hugged him, and then he gets into the car and all waving nicely to each other. So, sorry, this is a long answer, so I'm not really answering your question either. But I'm really happy with the UK, because the UK basically said, and excuse my French, the UK said, fuck you, Trump, without saying, fuck you, Trump. And they said it in very nuanced, subtle visuals, right? That everyone seeing that says, I know what's going on. If you're thinking in these other ways, but allows the UK to maintain this relationship with the US, which might bring some economic benefits. That means that the UK can position itself to be a bridge between the EU and Trump, and Zelensky and Trump, and that puts Keir Starmer, from a PR point of view, from his own kind of domestic politics point of view, in a pretty important position, which is good for him. And I think you're going to see some fascinating dynamics. It doesn't answer your question. Europe, I think, needs to step away from the US, do all that stuff I was talking about earlier, invest, get loads of kit, and get that kit to Ukraine. And we all need to get kit to Ukraine. It's great to hear even the UK is giving another loan where they have to buy stuff from the UK, which is unsurprising. But that's come out of this meeting today. So there's even more stuff going to Ukraine. So I think we shouldn't be dooming and glooming. This could be the lancing of the ball that needed to happen. Like, we needed this. We need, my personal opinion, sorry, I keep going on, but my personal opinion was Trump was always going to do this. And therefore, it's useful that it's now been done and it's out in the open, and we can all just get on and realize that. Ideologically, Trump is not interested in Ukraine. J.D. Vance is not interested in Ukraine. Project 2025 is not interested in Ukraine. They just want what's good for the transaction, good for them to kind of monetarily extract as much value as they can out of Ukraine and Russia, and they just want to get back into bed with Russia.
One quick follow-up, Johnny. Do you think I know, just really quick, do you think the state dinner will be canceled with Trump?
Sorry, can you repeat? I just accidentally turned that down. Sorry, can you say that again?
No, you're good. Do you think the UK will still continue with the state dinner and the invitation from the king? Do you think that will still go on?
Yes, but what's interesting there is that the king won't like it, right? The king, royal family doesn't like Trump. In all reality, right? He had that state visit when Queen Elizabeth was alive. He did the faux pas, walked in front of her, he did, like, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
She thinks he's a dick. Harry thinks he's a dick. Like, blah blah blah. Well, she's dead now, so she doesn't think anything. But like, Charles would have been used with permission, but would have been used by the Starmer government as a way of getting Trump on side, of like really playing to his ego and his narcissism. And he would have been like, yeah. And then if we go and say, like, I think some of the public would love him to go, screw you, Trump, you're not coming to Sandringham. But actually, the UK will still want to keep him on side, and the king will just, bite his tongue, and that will still go ahead, even though we might want it not to. Because we, again, and I kind of finish with this, there's a lot of people that want us to just tell the US to F off, and I'm kind of one of them, right? No offense, and by the US, I mean the Trump administration, not American people. And I was just doing a video where I was like, bring back Jake Sullivan, please bring back Jake Sullivan. Because Mike Waltz,
Georgie's like, no, please.
No, honestly, 100%.
You can't see me, but no.
I will stand by that 100%. Right, Mike Walls is being horrific at the moment, saying horrific things. It's the stuff he said today about Zelensky is horrific. Like, that's Mike Walls. Like, national security, Marco Rubio, horrific. Like, Keith Kellogg's being wheeled out to defend the party line. Jake Sullivan was giving weapons to Ukraine. That's exactly what they need. They need more sanctions and more weapons, and they would have got that from Jake Sullivan. Now, I would criticize Jake Sullivan to the cows come home, but he's still better than everything you're getting from the Trump administration at the moment. But anyway,
pretty low bar, but okay.
It's a low bar, but it's a bar that's
the floor.
Yeah. It's like asking, do you want a gun or a rope? Like, I'm sorry.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
It's like, the bar is so, so even Fox News came out with a graphic today that said, and this is brilliant for Fox News to have done this, right? The graphic on Fox News was aid to Ukraine from the Biden administration, 175 billion. So first of all, they've actually not said 350 billion. They said 175 billion. You can question that anyway, but they put aid from Biden, 175 billion, aid from Trump, $0. And they put that up, the massive on-screen thing. So the Trump administration has done nothing for Ukraine. They are threatening lifting sanctions, and they have already said they're not going to give any more weaponry to Ukraine unless X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. So, like, empirically, Jake Sullivan is infinitely, like, literally, in how maths works, infinitely better than the present Trump administration. So, yes, I would take Jake Sullivan over any all of them at the moment. And I forgot what your question was, but
you answered it. You answered
42.
42. And that should be the debate about Ukraine, right? About how well the aid is going, right? How well what do we got to present? There it is.
Ooh,
that's the graphic right there. Who put George? You did this?
I think the worst part is that they're presenting that as though it's a good thing, probably.
Right. Probably.
Yeah,
exactly.
Interesting point. I hadn't thought that. Yeah.
As I was saying, the conversation about Ukraine should be like that. Like how much, Jake Sullivan was not good enough. We need more. That is the actual good, nuanced conversations about aid to Ukraine. The problem is with media manipulation creates other narratives and other things we have to talk about or debate. And that is something that all five of us work with. Well, SK Media literally in the front lines, but also in on YouTube as well. What is the balance there? We'll start with Georgie, and this will be like the final major question, and then we'll go to wrap up.
Yeah, I'll need to balance.
Yep. I got you guys. I'm keeping an eye on it as best I can. Final question for all of you then, and then we'll wrap up. How do we balance that? How do we balance driving the narrative or driving how we support Ukraine, how we want them to win versus fighting lies and propaganda? Because it's like we have to balance both of this, right? We got to report what's happening in Ukraine, but then we have like an equal amount of propaganda that we have to like fight against at the same time. So how much time is spent in fighting the propaganda versus driving, what we actually care about? Let's start with Georgie.
Well, how we fight propaganda, we had already a big argument last time.
I agree with you, though. I agree with you, but I understood what Starsky and Dylan were saying, but yeah. I like the trolling much better. I do. I get it.
Yeah. So people that missed this, like it's been a long argument, but
it was a good one.
Yeah, my position, like I have absolutely zero self-respect. I'm interested in results, and I said like when they go low, we must go lower. So my question is to our governments: where is our propaganda-sponsored, counter-propaganda sponsored efforts? Where is our bot farms to fight the narratives? Where because what I want like the peoples of this world to fight narratives that we create and guide narratives that we need to drive to continue democracy instead of taking the high road. That's my position. Like you can argue that it is, but like I'm that low of I don't care. And then for the argument, what we can do right now, obviously all eyes are in Europe. I don't think that there's any discussion on this, and I think the most important thing right now is to get the heads together. Some guys reached out for me from the Technology for Ukraine. They're stating that they're gathering volunteers, engineers to volunteer for Ukraine, create projects. Super good initiative, something like this. Participate in fundraisers if you don't have any particular skills. But I want us all to understand that we are basically somewhat in a fight, right? Everyone is already like in a fight. If you're watching this, well, you're the resistance. So it's for us to now get engaged, get to our politicians. It seems that Europeans are willing to act. What I don't see is that Europeans have a solid plan to act. So we need to start creating plans, like media narratives, like popular people, like we need to start signing petitions, and not just petitions to do something like specific, but I'm saying like actual like plans for action, like specific projects, specific initiatives, build up a new factory in our town, stuff like that. Like let's do this. Let's ask. The governments are willing to engage, and most and foremost is engaged with the European governments. For the Americans, I already see, like Mercado correctly said, that Americans are doing a lot. There's a lot of people that are coming out against Trump and what he's doing, protesting JD Vance, making them fucking uncomfortable. Do more of that.
Thank you, Georgie. Nick?
I don't think there is a difference between helping Ukraine and fighting propaganda. It's just two sides of the same coin. I think education is the silver bullet. The more people are educated on what the reality is, then, the better things get. Piaget said that all salient learning is painful. We don't like learning things because we have to admit that we were wrong in the first place, so that we were undereducated. So you end up, it's a process. It's a process. It's a process. It's a process. There's no one argument that's going to win the day. There's no one way to convince. So you sit there, and for us, it's streaming. And I really like what Georgie said, which is for everybody, it's a different thing. For everybody, it's a different thing, but it's sort of all hands on deck. We stream, we try to talk about what we're seeing. We try to say, okay, here's what they're saying. Here's what the reality is. and it's a tug of war over this rope. And you know what? I am proudly America first. I am proudly America first. But what that means is that I recognize that we're not in competition really with anybody, and that the more friends we have and the more people that we work with, the better it is for my country. It's great for everybody. So why are we not doing that? Why is Trump sitting there saying, well, we have to win at the cost of you? That is a juvenile way of thinking things. So one of the ways I help Ukraine, I cover Ukraine. The other way I help Ukraine is I say, this is what Trump is doing and saying, and this is why he's stupid, and this is why anybody who is America first has to oppose it. He's easy. I get it. He's easy. He speaks in ways that's really, to some people you can understand it, to some you can, but he's easy. I get it. Easy is rarely the right thing. If the easy road was always the right road, everybody would always do the right thing. If you really care about your country and care about people, take the time to learn and study and figure out what's going on.
Thank you, Nick. SK Media.
Can I quickly just jump because I need to bounce?
Oh,
really.
yeah, go ahead, George.
Thank you so much for this invitation. JP, nice seeing you again. Nick as well. Spaghetti, nice meeting you for the first time. Hope we can do more. And because you're a fighter on the front line, I was not sure what you're doing. Now I know a little bit more.
I just got out a few days ago.
Okay, you got out.
Although I got to say, I was talking with a friend today. He's trying to enlist, and I was showing him there's a website here in Ukraine where you can look at all the units and the jobs they're looking for. And I showed him a big page of all these units looking for drone pilots as an example. I start looking at the units, and I'm just like, wow, that's a really great unit. I'm already starting to think about getting back in. So it gets addictive, but that's me. So.
Okay. But still reach out, like maybe you have some good connections. I'll tell you what we're doing behind the scenes.
I just wanted to ask, I'm just looking at your name on the thing. It says Remac Nord. Is that the name of your channel? Or
No. It's just like the account that I'm using. I should have been using my Ukraine Matters account. Yeah, this is just like my private gaming, whatever, like stupid stuff. Like so.
Okay,
old
Andrew, you can pass on my Signal contact to him, and we'll get in touch.
Yeah, Signal is the best.
I definitely will do that.
All right. Take care, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Georgie. Hey, wait, Georgie, how can people follow you? How can people follow you and support your work? Quick.
Follow Mercado Media first and foremost, but for me, like obviously it's just right Ukraine Matters in YouTube, and you'll get me there.
Sounds good, Georgie. Thank you again. See you soon.
Take care.
All right, that was Georgie. Now SK Media, propaganda, fighting. How much do we do it, and how much do we just drive home the things we care about?
Well, so I have years of experience in actually professionally doing counter disinfo, and what I find it's very disheartening, just because the people who hold the purse strings for many governments, what they want to see is either fact checking or they want to see some kind of technical analysis. Like we use we use this new software to track the various paid troll networks or bot farms or whatever, and that can be useful. But honestly, I don't think either of these things are particularly effective. And the reason why is because you need to tell a better story. What that means is, like, if you have a government website saying, the Russians said this, or I could give you an example, EU versus Disinfo. That's the European Union's website, which debunks various Russian claims. And you have this website from the EU, it's government funded, and you're going to tell people who, everybody in the West, it's like cool to be anti-government. I know what's really going on, and you're all sheep, right? And you're going to tell this person like, oh, no. Okay, so you read that story about Zelensky buying a mansion, but here, if you look on this government funded website, here are the facts. Here's what really happened, right? Well, that's not going to work. That's going to go in one ear and out the other. Because what you're doing there is you are playing into their personal fantasy, their main character syndrome, where, I'm the smart guy who doesn't believe everything his government says, right? And so what you need is a narrative, and that's what, Russian propaganda in particular has a narrative, right? It has this idea that like, oh, you're under control of the elites of your country, and Russia actually wants to be your friend, but it's your evil government that's keeping us from being friends. And this narrative, you see like with RT, their famous line is question more, right? So it makes you sound like you're a smart, independent thinker because you question more. You don't just accept what the government says to you, right?
Right.
And actually, I almost feel I'm going to start channeling Alex Jones. Actually. But yeah, you're a smart guy. Doesn't believe what his government tells him, right? And yeah, so that's a narrative, right? And you can only counter that with another narrative. And so what I said, I believe it was an interview back in 2017, because that's when I first tried to join the Ukrainian military. I don't know if that part got cut out, but I said that yes, Ukraine could win a war against Russia by, first of all, you have to have very strong unity in the country. One of the greatest things to come out of Maidan, when they talk about the sort of renaissance of the Ukrainian national identity and culture, but a big part of that is what people call the civic Ukrainian nationality or idea. This idea that being Ukrainian is not a matter of blood or something like that. It's more a matter of basically just supporting Ukraine's independence, its freedom. It's about being a forward-thinking, open-minded person. It's about, it doesn't matter who your parents are, or it doesn't, in fact, for many Ukrainians, it doesn't even matter if you primarily speak Russian. The delineation is all about, are you a Ukrainian citizen? Do you support Ukraine? And even if you prefer to speak Russian, are you going to bitch about other people who want to see the Ukrainian language, brought back in more prominence? Because that was a big problem that Ukrainians had to deal with since 1991, right? So it's a cultural thing, but it's a cultural identity thing that anybody can adopt as long as you just, sort of adopt these basic things. And what I said is, besides the other factor, besides national unity, is that Ukraine needs to become something more than a country. It has to become an idea. It has to become an idea that people all around the world can identify with as a symbol of the struggles that they see in their own country or in their own politics or, whatever they're dealing with. And I'm happy to say that I think we saw that in 2022, but I think we're actually seeing that again now. I was very happy to see that. Of all the things Trump has done since he came back, one of the things that seems to have animated people the most is Ukraine, that you see those flags, you see people talking about Zelensky, and many of them didn't really know much about Ukraine before 2022, but everybody understands this concept of smaller democratic country attacked by and I don't throw this word around lightly, but fascist bully. And any decent person can see that you need to oppose that. And if you're going to call yourself an American patriot and you care about things like freedom and your guns, you cannot tolerate this kind of behavior by Russia. And you certainly don't tolerate Americans who sell out their country to Russia, which is exactly what unfortunately has happened. And when I talk about that idea, eventually, I think the struggle that the world is going through right now is that we have authoritarian kleptocracies on one side, and we have democratic countries or democratic movements on the other side, where people want accountability for people in power, where people want to have a decent shot at education, healthcare, a life, career, and everything. And what we're seeing in America is essentially the Russification of America. We're seeing a small group of oligarchs trying to import the Russian neo-feudal capitalist system into the U.S. They want to use the power of the state to enrich themselves. That's what Doge is doing, right, is that they are simply redirecting government funds to their friends and themselves, and anything else they cut and just give themselves, they just put that into the next tax cut. And the flip side of that is that they will purge the state of people they don't see as loyal, and they want to take over federal law enforcement and basically use the state to smash down, basically to tamp down anybody who wants to stand up to that. That is where we're going. And so this struggle is going on in many different countries around the world. And you often see protest movements breaking out in various countries. Georgia, of course, has an ongoing protest movement. And that's the real conflict in the world. A lot of these right-wing demagogues, are attempting to, to stoke things like ethnic tensions. They're using racism. They're using all kinds of emotional issues to pit people against each other while they're robbing their own people, and they want to rob other countries, right? And so the Ukraine is I want to say like the focal point of this right now, because it's a question of what system is going to triumph. Is it going to be the Putinist death cult type system run by oligarchs and authoritarians and essentially fascists, or is it going to be political pluralism, democracy, accountability, rule of law, things like that, because the Ukraine, people say, well, Ukraine had corruption and all this. Well, yeah, but see, Ukraine is continually fighting against it. That's what Maidan was about. And that's one reason, the major reason why Russia attacked, is because they wanted to keep Ukraine in that post-Soviet swamp, keep the kleptocracy. They wanted to make it into another Belarus, basically. And Ukrainians said no. And Ukrainians are spending their blood far more than anybody to have a normal country where people are held to account, where there's actual more equitable system for everybody. And so if we can transmit this to people around the world and say, hey, look, this struggle is actually your struggle, and it can be a symbol of your struggle, in the same way that we saw like in Syria, you would see these Ukrainian flags in Syria. At Maidan, you would see the Syrian independence flag flying there. So, you have to, instead of trying to just like fact check the propaganda to fight propaganda, what you need to do is tell a better story, tell it louder, tell it with more force, and besides that, just dismiss a lot of propaganda. I mean, one reason I'm trying to disengage from Twitter is because there's just so much bullshit there, and you don't even know if the person you're talking to is a real person, because the chatbots have gotten so good at that, right? So when you have when you have people like this talking utter nonsense, what you do is you just dismiss them. I say this all the time. I just, I say, yeah, everything you said here is wrong. Dismissed. Like, we're not going to have a debate. We're not going to have a debate. Oh, maybe Ukraine wasn't neutral in 2014. No, it was neutral. That there was a law they had that was neutral, right? If someone acts like, oh, well, maybe Obama could have snapped his fingers and made Ukraine NATO if the Russia didn't invade. No, you can't do that. That's not how countries join NATO. We know how countries join NATO. Russia knows how countries join NATO. This is not a mystery. It's not like selecting a new pope, right? Right. And so, yeah, so one thing we do is just, and I said this in my most famous most watched video, I just said, like, don't argue with bullshit, dismiss it. Like, if somebody is honestly coming in good faith and they're just kind of ignorant, they're just like, well, I heard about this and the facts, then help them out, right? If you think it's actually going to make a difference. But with some people, like I saw Andrew earlier, you're talking to one of these vet bro guys who's talking about, the old, why don't you go fight in Ukraine? You think you're so tough, go fight in Ukraine if you care so much. Well, like that argument like literally makes no sense and just really doesn't deserve to be taken seriously. And it's funny because every time I pop in there, most of the time, a few guys have said, well, okay, at least you put your money where your mouth is. But more often than not, it's just like, well, you're fake. How do you tweet? Like, you're LARPer. It's like, well, dude, like, come to Kiev. We'll sit down. You can see all my documents. I'll show you all my pictures and videos on my phone. Many of them I don't want to post because they'll get banned from Twitter for the violence. But yeah, what do you do with people like that? Just dismiss them, because otherwise, the thing is, it is so much easier to put out propaganda and bullshit than it is to debunk it. It usually takes you like 10 times the amount of time that someone spends on that.
This is something called Brandolini's law. So Brandolini's law is bullshit asymmetry, and bullshit asymmetry is like, yeah, exactly that. It will take you vastly more time to unpick the absolute BS that people spout than it takes for them to spout that BS, and that is the unfairness of the universe, and it sucks, and it means it's more difficult to be truthful and to be a fact checker, and the effort you got to put in is just far greater than the effort you have to put into being a dick.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they don't understand the concept of bullshit, and which is usually a big part of propaganda, is that it's not like lying. Lying is different from bullshitting, right? And in bullshitting and propaganda, what you're doing is you are going to take certain things that are facts, but what you're going to do is you're going to through weaving a different story, through leaving certain things out and characterizing something another way, you're going to basically turn it into this thing that takes a long time to unpick. So when someone says that NATO expansion is what started the war in Ukraine, you don't even know where to start, because even if we're talking about Ukraine's history in NATO, you could start from there and you can go through the whole history, which I did on my famous video. But in reality, you have to stop and sit back and say, hey, wait a minute. Why is it Russia gets to invade and annex part of a country because they think that country may join an alliance that's already on its border that is not hostile, because they flat out declared that in the Russia-NATO Founding Act, right? But also, no country, they already had NATO countries on their border the whole time. None of those countries ever made a demand on Russia for territory. None of them have ever threatened to attack Russia, right? So why is that? Why are we even considering that an acceptable response to the possibility that sometime in the future Ukraine could be in NATO? Why is that an existential threat to
100%.
Russia? Right, and they cannot, and they can't answer that, because at the end of the day, you're going to say, okay, so what was going to happen is somehow Ukraine was going to get in NATO, and then suddenly NATO was going to say, ha, we lied when we did the NATO Founding Act, and actually we were about to launch Operation Barbarossa 2. Like, no, nobody was going to do that. I mean, you could see, especially in those days, I mean, the West was so friendly to Russia, coddling them constantly because it was an emerging market. And I was in Russia at the time, and like when you hear about this anti, all this anti-NATO stuff, if you were to see the way that Europeans were talking about Russia, there were so many business deals were going on, and it was all nonsense. And Russia was even going to get a visa-free travel to the EU until 2014, basically spoiled the deal. So I'm sorry, I see that Jonathan has to go soon. So
Yep.
So
we're going to get Jonathan's take, and then we're going to wrap up regardless. So you're fine.
Yeah, that's right. Yield the floor. I will just mute.
Thank you so much, SK Media. And Johnny, go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, sorry, I didn't at all mean to cut SK off, because actually, like everything everyone's just said, literally everything everyone's just said, I agree with like a gazillion %. And there's some fascinating stuff on SK that we just need to sit down and have a massive chat. So the kind of like low-level BS stuff, you can dismiss that. I have an issue with my quite knowledgeable intellectual sort of friends that exist in you have different planes of friends and whatever. I had people that, like, one of my best mates hit me today with like a Jeffrey Sachs speech to the EU that he made, that he's brought in by a bunch of skeptics and blah 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 and that's the stuff I have a problem with, which is this seemingly really rational, reasonable set of arguments that's often to do with things like NATO expansionism, your John Mearsheimer, Jeffrey Sachs. That does a lot of damage, I think, to people who get kind of brought into this sphere of thinking, and we need to do something about that. And there is stuff that people like Alexander Stubb, for example, and many others have done great videos that completely debunk these things. But you get sucked into particular ecosystems, and you end up, being a part of that ecosystem. It's a problem. But going back to the ideas of a positive narrative, that's so freaking important. So going back to Brexit in 2016, part of the problem was I was a Remainer, right? I publicly debated Brexit in et cetera, but part of the problem was the EU didn't put enough, or the Remain campaign or whoever, but I think the EU actually needs to do this, is put enough effort into communicating. And you can say this about Biden as well. About the 4 years of Biden administration, they didn't sell it. They didn't like say, by the way, we achieved all of this stuff, and the reason you've got that job is because we did the Chips and Science Act, and the reason the Inflation Reduction Act got this. I don't want to go down party political lines here, but you've got to, like, what Trump is amazing at doing is saying, I'm freaking amazing and I did this. And even if he didn't do that, it's like, that was me that did that. No, it wasn't, but he does it and he sells it. So the EU needed to sell how good it was to the British, or the Remain campaign needed to sell the EU to Britain, say, this is what the EU has enabled us to do. And actually, the EU needs to do that right now. in disinformation, as does the US. But the US are now defunding Voice of America, Radio Free Liberty, and their soft power around the world through USAID, et cetera, et cetera. They are basically, and they've just announced they're stopping their cyber attacks against Russia. They've basically ceded the information space to the Russians and the Chinese, and this is deeply, deeply worrying. Like, this is a big problem. The Europeans need to take their disinformation thing, that I think they are making it permanent now, but I just haven't heard much information about the department or the setup they've got. They need to be selling a positive narrative, and that idea that SK was talking about, that Ukraine is representing something more than Ukraine is an idea, is so absolutely spot on. When you see what's going on in the American government, it is a microcosm, it is a reflection of the war that's going on in Ukraine with Russia, the autocracy attacking the smaller democratic ideals of Ukraine. That's what's happening at the moment with the Trump administration, in my opinion, eating the government, and you've got a growing autocracy and democracy is receding. And the people who are defending democracy in the US are the people who are defending Ukraine. They're the people with Ukrainian flags, and they're the people that are interested in the war from the Ukrainian point of view. And I think that there is a symmetry there that is so super important. So we need troll farms. People, experts in disinformation, have talked about this previously. Like, we need to be presenting like narratives, but we need to be fighting back. And it's not about disinformation. So the Russians will say, we're going to disinform, we're going to amplify grievances and do all that kind of stuff. It's not that we need to do exactly the same back, that we need to lie about things. We need to present a really strong positive narratives and information, not disinformation, to the Russians, so that they or whoever, so that they understand reality much better. So that's something we need to do. And we can do that using the techniques that the Russians use, and troll farms and bot farms, and we just need to be fighting. But because at the moment, I think we're losing the disinformation war, and you'll find that governments that get elected in are governments that are able to manipulate social media to their own ends. I think Trump did that masterfully in order to get elected, and I think we can learn from that. So much more. I wanted to comment on stuff that Nick said, stuff that Georgie said before he left, and SK. All amazing stuff, but I think disinformation is one of the biggest challenges, what I call the epistemic crisis. The idea that we don't know what's right from wrong, knowledge from truth from lies, and information from disinformation and misinformation is the biggest crisis facing us, as well as the assault on democracy. But it's connected, and that confusion allows radical populism to take hold and present simple answers to complex problems, and that then allows people who are wholly inadequate to rule, and then, like now. So again, I'll leave with this. The US government is in place now. Trump administration were radical populists, and they had simple answers to very complex problems, and they are now just burning up the government, and that's their simple answer. And you end up sacking people who are in charge of nuclear codes or nuclear maintenance, and you end up sacking people in charge of Ebola safety, and yeah, brilliant idea. Go and cause do some efficiency. Hunting out more efficiency of the government, but if you're burning everything to the ground, then that is a simple answer to a complex problem, and it doesn't do the right thing, and it's not good. And so this is what we're allowing. So yeah, education, fighting back, and I said I'll leave you with this, but I'll leave you with this. H1 Gen 1 in your live chat said this. So part of what I think we also need to do is develop a fertile ground for humans to be able to change their minds more easily. Because we get set in our ways, and like you attach political movements to your identity, and then if you can't change a political view because that's unseating your entire identity. And it's particularly problematic in the US because you register often, depending on where you are, but you register as a Democrat or a Republic. Or
two options, right? You only get two choices.
Well, yeah. Whereas in the UK, you're like, I am going to vote for, rather than I am a registered. So if I'm a registered Democrat, then I'm much more likely to vote Democrat all the rest of my life because that's what I'm registered. Anyway, H1 Gen 1 said, I'm sorry for voting Trump all 3 times. He's the worst president we've ever had. I had to do a lot of mental gymnastics to hope Trump would help Ukraine, but all the signs were there. I'm sorry. Now, that is a truly brilliant comment, because that is someone, and it can be on any subject, right? It doesn't have to be about Trump, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that you can say, I was wrong. I was wrong 3 times. I did this. And do you know what? Mea culpa. People don't do that enough. So look, hats off to H1 Gen 1, because that is what we need to do more of, which is the evidence has come to reach a threshold whereby my original position is not justified anymore. And I would bore you with cognitive dissonance and cognitive dissonance reduction, but that is one of the biggest issues that we face. And we are just so bad at changing our minds, and we hold on to the core beliefs when we are not warranted in doing so. And that's all wrapped up with the information, disinformation, etc.
Exactly. And you're so right, because that's how someone like me, I supported Trump once. You want to say something, SK?
Oh yeah, like just to sort of as a corollary to that, I mean, you know, I know what it means to like. One reason I'm good at spotting disinfo and debunking is because I was basically a victim of disinfo for a lot of my youth and believed in incredibly stupid stuff. And you know, it's almost like trial and error. And what I find is that it's very sad to see, like, when you look at Twitter has basically become 4chan, and you know, it's overrun by nihilistic Nazi tankies. You can't even tell the difference sometimes anymore. But one thing is, I think, is more people start to see that, wow, a lot of people can actually fall for bullshit like this. Maybe it gives us an opening there to say, like, look, you fell for this nonsense, right? But a lot of other people did too. And what you can do is you can be like them, and you can stay there in the swamp, or you can pull yourself out of that. And you know, you got to ask yourself, you know, how much time do you think you have left in your life, right? Do you want to die mad about something that's not even happening, like next week getting hit by a bus? Or do you want to have an understanding where it's like, yes, there are problems in the world, there are threats, there are dangers, and we need to, you know, they need to be solved. Exactly. But we are not in some kind of political thriller movie. You know, Q is not going to save you. You know, like, live in reality, because you only have so much time left. And living in reality can be upsetting sometimes, because knowledge, you know, I think, what was it earlier? Was it you, Nick, that was mentioning that quote about knowledge?
All salient learning is painful.
Yes, I kind of thought of H.P. Lovecraft and his whole concept of, like, you know, the more you know, the worse it is, because you know how bad things really are. But
ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't understand that, you know, even when you accept how bad things are in reality, just living in reality is better, because you understand you can do something. Because the thing about all these conspiracy theories is that, let someone tell you about their whole conspiracy theory that they believe in, the Illuminati, the Zionists, whatever they want to say, and then say, okay, let's just say I believe everything you said, that the deep state is doing whatever. Okay, what do we do about it? Like right now, like, let's leave this place right now. Tell me what to do about this. Do we go get AR-15s and shoot something? Do we, what do we do, right? And that's the thing is, you'll see that a lot of them really don't have much beyond either tell people to read this book. If they're the grifters, because you have two people here, right? You have the grifters and you have the grifted. And if they're the grifted, like, they have nothing to do. Like, all these conspiracy theories, whether right wing, left wing, whatever, they, at best, they're like, well, we'll protest sometimes, or you know, spread the word, make awareness, right? Look at the 9/11 truther movement, right? It's 2025. It is February in 2025, and 9/11 truthers are still insisting that's an inside job. We need to investigate 9/11, and they're using the same arguments that are literally debunked as far back as 2001, 2002, in all this time. Have they arrested? Have they even indicted, or even investigate a single person involved in this inside job? Even though we've had several different presidents, and a radically different president now. Where's the justice?
There's never a landing point.
Where's the real Kennedy killer, right? Like, what happens? Like, and I knew a guy from New Zealand who was trying to tell me about this whole 9/11 thing. We argued for a long time. I just said, tell me, like, where do we go from here? What happens now? And he said, well, you got to understand, like, enough people wake up and they'll do something about it. And I'm just like, Sorry for the Kiwi audience out there trying to approximate the Kiwi accent, but I was like, okay, but lots of people do believe in that conspiracy theory. Nothing's happened. Like, what are you going to do? You know, and when you look at people who live in reality, and we talk about politics and the system and everything, it's like, yeah, a lot of it's boring. A lot of it is stuff like voting in special elections or running for offices that nobody cares about, but that actually gets results. And the proof in that, if you want to look at where the Republicans got today, a lot of that started with them mobilizing turnout, because they didn't really have majorities, but what they did was they got groups of people who are reliable voting blocks, who will always get to the polls. And then what they also did is they went and looked at all these state elections and lower level politics, and they basically swept those over the years. It gave them a lot of power.
And the other problem is that the fear sells more than hate. Fear sells more than joy. And literally, like, the Democrats were like joy, 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 and they used that term as one of their things. But it would be great if actually that motivated people to vote more, but it's really annoying that human nature is actually more anger. We are more susceptible to anger and fear than we are to joy. So
just watch the turnout too, because there people are angry and they're very mad right now, and there will be a lot of people Well, that's a whole other conversation. I want to have that too with you, Johnny and Nick. If we can have a domestic American conversation at some point in the future, I would love that.
100%. I've got to go now. What I will say is that the protests you're seeing now, one against Trump and one against Musk and two against JD Vance, but more the one you're seeing against Musk at the moment. If you want the US to change its course at all, and I've said this a number of times recently, then you will need a populist uprising, and the biggest way you're going to get that is not an eat the rich kind of thing, but like, you've got billionaires, you've got 13 billionaires in your cabinet, and you've got one unelected guy right at the center of that who is dictating what your country is doing. And he's stripping Social Security, Medicaid and Medicare almost certainly. That's the only way that the tax cuts are going to realistically get through or get done. You've got to raise the debt ceiling, and then you've got to find that money from all those things. Now that's going to piss people off, and getting people out on the street and the people at the Tesla dealerships today with their placards, like, it sounds horrible. That's what I want to see. I want to see a movement of people who are angry enough that this is deeply unfair, because then you'll start getting a government that's more interested in what the people want rather than what the billionaires want. Exactly. And that will have a far greater effect than any kind of. I think you just got to go for the billionaires thing. That's how you mobilize a movement, and that will be aligned with helping Ukraine. There is some overlap, but anyway.
Final prompt. I got you, Johnny, because you have to go. All three of you will start with Johnny, and then we'll go to Nick, and then we'll go to SK. Let me see here. I had it right here. What message do you want people to take away from the discussion we had today? And then also how people can follow you and follow your work. Start with Johnny.
ATP Geopolitics, find me on YouTube. That's basically where I spend my entire 28 hours a day. So thank you for that, and thanks for the opportunity. Takeaway, I don't know. Great to see the support for Ukraine. What I really liked is that on my Facebook, which I don't really hang out too much at as much as I used to, but after the fracas in the White House, so many people were throwing around Ukraine memes and flags, like even
profile pictures too.
Yeah, people that weren't previously interested in that, like there was just an inundation, and so that goes back to the movement of the people, and I think then there needs to be some. There needs to be that overlap of getting a groundswell of movement to change. And there's so many things I want to talk about. Like, the economy in the US is so important, right? And the fact that everything that Trump is doing at the moment is inflationary is actually, like, I don't want the economy in the US to be a disaster, because obviously that's going to affect real people. But from an abstract point of view, you want the US economy to fail, because then Trump, that will bite him on the arse, and you will get a change of you. The only way you're going to affect change in the US is with those very public Yeah, it pockets and the public, and that's linked to the pockets, which is billionaires. That's hurting us, and the cost of eggs and blah blah blah. So those things are going to affect to change. Like, you are not going to get Trump to change his mind on Ukraine because someone goes, "Oh, by the way, it's in the long-term strategic interests of the US to support you." You know, he's like, "Don't give a shit," like blah blah blah. So that's one of the things. And always one of the things to take away from this is disinformation. Like, we are in an epistemic crisis. We are fighting for what is true, and that is a long-term thing, and that is going to be an ongoing thing. And we need to be much better prepared from a strategic, kind of practical, governmental. And people don't like this, but from a regulation point of view, and from investing in presenting a positive narrative and fighting disinformation and providing information. You know, those are two things, but it needs to be coordinated and much better invested in.
Thank you, Johnny Pierce. Nick, final thoughts, message you want to take away, and shout out your platforms.
Yeah, so my name is Nick Soutter. I am the host of In Time. It's youtube.com/In Time Show. We're hard to find if you look for us on YouTube, because the In Time was a movie as well, and so we're just named. Oh, dear Lord. Yeah, the bane of my existence. So we're also on Blue Sky and various other platforms, but we stream primarily on YouTube. We talk about various political issues, social issues, and Ukraine is obviously one of the big ones, and as is Trump. So the takeaway, there's about 650 people watching live right now, and they're not watching for me, and they're not watching for the panelists, and they're not even watching for Merck. They are to some extent, but they're watching because they want to see some sense of hope, and they want to see what it is that we're talking about, and they want to understand it better. And Merck is good at explaining it. All of us have our audiences. I explain it the way I do, and that's why I have my audience. If I couldn't connect with them somehow, they'd go to somebody who could. What we've heard repeatedly here is help in the way that you can. For some people, it's by supporting people who talk about these topics, Merck, myself, Jonathan, SK. For other people, it's by donating to candidates. For not enough people, it's running for office. If Trump can fucking become president, then you can run and become a local congressman for your state. There's so many things that you can do. And if you can't do those things, I guarantee you there are ways that you can help. So it really is, I think, do you believe in, when you talk about freedom, do you believe in it? Or do you just sort of say that from the armchair and getting on Twitter and arguing with people? Right. Anyone can argue with people.
Exactly.
Go out and do something. And to that end, I've heard a lot of people say, go contact your congressman. You can go do that. But here's what I recommend. Don't tell them, well, gee, I'm not going to vote for you. Mm-hmm. Tell them every month, I'm going to write out a check for $100. And it is going to go either to you or to your opponent. And what determines that is, how do you feel about Ukraine? How do you feel about Trump, who's completely taken over? Tell them what you're prepared to do about it. Just saying, well, I won't vote for you. Everybody's heard that 1,000 times. So go out, be proactive somehow, and engage. And the fact that there is this many people here with you now today talking about it means you're not alone. All of us sit there and say, what can I do? Nothing. You can't do a thing by yourself, except find other people and work with them. And that there's so many people here now means you're not alone. Go out, participate.
Thank you, Nick. SK Media, Spaghetti.
Yeah, so SK Media, I am still on Twitter a bit, also Blue Sky. My YouTube channel has been dead for a long time for obvious reasons, but now that I am back in Kiev, I will be uploading soon. I don't want to disappoint anybody. If you're looking for massive inside Ukraine analysis, that's not what my channel was intended to do. I didn't plan this war. So obviously I do have some videos on there, and my most popular video is about that. But yeah, my takeaway here would be, I am heartened to see that Ukraine has become such a sticking point for so many people, that it's become an issue that has animated many people, because there was this feeling that even people who were supportive in 2022 were just kind of it was sort of falling off the radar, right? Because I understand, I understand Americans and I understand my people in the sense that like we have issues to deal with in the country, and there was an election season and everything, and so obviously people were focused more at home. But what was very interesting is that, like I said earlier, with everything Trump was doing, the thing that seemed to really get a lot of people out in the streets, including a lot of Republicans and conservatives, even Trump voters, was what he did the other day to Zelensky. And it's really getting people to sort of coalesce around this cause, because Ukraine's cause really is, I think, all of our, it's all of ours. And besides that, in terms of what to do, obviously, like, it's very funny when people say stuff like, well, if you care about Ukraine so much, why don't you go fight? And they don't realize that many of the people that they're saying this to are donating even small amounts of money. But when they're donating to organizations like Wild Hornets or Ghost Drones, and they're buying FPV drones, like that suburban wine mom you're making fun of is literally killing Russian soldiers. They're getting shredded by very small donations from a lot of people, buy a lot of drones, right? And even some of the sea drones that have been used against Russian targets, including Russian warships, many of those are actually crowdfunded. And I think it's United 24 that has that raises money for the naval drones, and those basically crippled the Russian Black Sea fleet in the Black Sea. So now they're sort of bottled up more to the Sea of Azov and Novorossiysk. So yes, you can make a difference like that. Like I said, people here in Ukraine with much lower salaries are making a difference doing stuff like that. Inform yourself. Like, actually, here's one thing: when you see somebody talking about Ukraine, I'm talking about an anti-Ukraine person who, these sort of pseudo-intellectuals are like, well, actually, there's a context behind this. You probably don't know what happened in 2014 with Victoria Nuland and Yanukovych and the CIA coup. And see, they do this because, let's face it, most Americans don't really follow politics in other countries, and they weren't paying attention at Maidan. So if you have someone come along and very confidently start spitting out names like Viktor Yanukovych and who else? Victoria Nuland, right? Yep. And they keep spitting these names out, and what happens is it overwhelms people. And this is how conspiracy theorists spread their ideas typically, is that they just do a little more research than your average person, then spit these things very confidently, and they sound like they know what they're talking about, right? And when you encounter people like that, sometimes I want to ask them, I just want to say, could you name like literally one book you have read cover to cover that's about Ukraine? Just any recognized, well-known book about Ukraine. And the fact is that in English, there are not many that are actually very popular. Luckily, the Ukrainian historian Serhiy Plokhy has been making Ukrainian history more accessible to foreign audiences, especially English-speaking audiences. But generally, there were not many books out there with a very good history of Ukraine. Many of them were written by people who maybe were more generalist, Eastern Europe. Unfortunately, often people who are Russia experts, it's just kind of assumed that, oh, you're a Russia expert and you traveled to Kiev a few times to get your visa. So, clearly you know about Ukraine. And so, get informed. That, like, we had today there was an editorial that people were commenting on from The Hill, and it was a realist international relations expert. He's from I believe it was the Institute of Peace and Democracy, and basically he is rooting in order to get peace and democracy, we need to reward an aggressive invader that is not democratic, and let them basically institute a Nazi regime on occupied territory, right? And everyone was pointing out the nonsense. This guy was talking about Zelensky's alleged problems and how he aggravated things. And anyone who knew anything, even if you weren't in Ukraine, if you were actually following Ukrainian politics at the time and Zelensky's career in politics, you would know this guy had no idea what he's talking about. But he's an academic and he's in a think tank, so of course every legacy media outlet is like, oh yeah, of course, like you should get to you should get to write an op-ed for us. And it's funny because I could say, like, I actually made an attempt to respond to a very similarly misinformed op-ed like this from Washington Post once, and they wouldn't print it because I never went to college and I never, I don't work for a think tank. What would I know? I just spent over 12 years in Russia at that point, in Russia and Ukraine, and speak the languages and actually been on the front line. But like, what could I possibly know about the situation, right? So get informed so that when people, I wish Jonathan were still here because he talked about people sending you, when they send you stuff like, well, Jeffrey Sachs or John Mearsheimer. I have people all the time say, John Mearsheimer was at Harvard, and you think you know more about Ukraine than John Mearsheimer? And I say, yes, I, the guy who never went to college, I know more about Ukraine than John Mearsheimer, and I will meet John Mearsheimer and I will explain to him why I know more about it to him. I will embarrass him by asking him very simple questions. I have a feeling that he actually knows the answers that I would be, the questions I would be asking him, but he's lying. And many of these experts are basically lying. They're either deliberately leaving stuff out or just not telling the truth. So when you get more informed about this stuff, you're not intimidated by saying, oh, John Mearsheimer of Harvard. You're not going to get cowed by people throwing names at you, right? So other than that, I mean, obviously I agree with all the other things suggested, like get involved in politics, understand that real politics that actually makes changes. It can be boring. It can be nerve-wracking because it's not exciting. When you actually look at like how Congress works and how primaries work and why is it this person can get elected in this district, but that person's politics in another state, another district would get them basically ran out of town on a rail. It's really annoying. It's like, why did Joe Manchin exist, right? Like, what's the deal with Joe Manchin? But it's just that was what a Democrat would have to be like to win in that particular race in that particular state, right? Once you understand that, you look at the situation and say, wow, we are really fucked up. It seems intractable. But once you understand how it really works, only then can you ever hope to make any changes. The big revolution in the streets, the American Maidan, I don't think that's going to happen. I'd love an American Maidan. By all means, if you guys got enough tires to bring to DC, give it a try. But it's okay, by the way. It's okay because, as you know, Trump said it's okay to actually attack the Capitol building and invade it. So clearly, this is a tactic he endorses. But honestly, the tire fires would cause a lot of pollution in the surrounding area. So, so really steel yourself for how boring regular politics are, but just understand that that's just kind of the way it works. And could you do something outside the system? Trump clearly does that. Yeah, you could, right? But you got to be able to play the game first. Then you learn how to, do little tricks, right?
Exactly. Well, SK Media, Nick, we had amazing guests today. Georgie from Ukraine Matters, Jonathan from ATP Geopolitics. We tried to, Anna P was supposed to be on, but Ukraine is active war zone and maybe her internet didn't work. So it is what it is. Hopefully we have Anna on again in the future. Thank you guys so much again for spending your time here today. Thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for giving the viewers your time and expertise. And I can't wait to have another one in the future.
Delightful anytime. I enjoyed it.
Nick, SK, you guys have a good one.
Thank you.
Yep.
You too.
All right. What another good panel. Another panel in the books. Again, if you didn't, Anna was supposed to be on it. I try to have Ukrainians on every one because we're talking about Ukraine. Just so to have like a bunch of Americans or, especially Americans talking about Ukraine kind of sounds, it's kind of like, especially right now, it's like, oh, you guys sure have a lot to say, but your country is like abandoning it. But I mean, that's just the reality of America. We have federal governments, we have state governments. I live in Minnesota. On a state level, my state of Minnesota supports Ukraine because the governor came out and was like, our Governor Walz obviously ran with Kamala Harris to become vice president. But we have a large Ukrainian community in Minnesota, especially Minneapolis, but they're all over Minnesota, but a lot of them are in Minneapolis. Minnesota stands with Ukraine. Our state does. So you gotta, while the federal government and the state level of Trump's administration is dog shit, there are most states, like states and the governors and the people within them support Ukraine, even red states too. But they have to toe the line and do whatever Trump says. or face political retribution or irrelevancy. Yeah, it was talked about on the panel before we went live really quick. We're not going to go through news today. I'm gonna play Tiger Woods golf. That's what I'm doing for the rest of my Sunday, because this is a nightmare and I need energy for this week. But yeah, this clown, donut operator, this one. Look at this dude. Look at this beefy fucking vet bro boy. When you see this picture, you think fucking America. Dude's coming in to kick down some doors. I can save some old ladies and cats and spread America everywhere. No. Biggest pussy, biggest little bitch I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. And I tell this to his face. I will tell this to donut operator to his face. I don't give a fuck. All of these vet bro, war bro, the word I can't say. I need permission. But it's like the only way that it can be explained for these people. And they suck. And I hate it. And it sucks because they're in the veteran community. They're in this vet community that I don't engage with it really. I have veterans in my own community, and I like that better. I don't want to engage with these losers, because that's what they are. They're losers. Nothing. He does this. This is what Donut Operator provides. He lets incels and right-wing extremists and other veterans that have never done anything else. And look at Herrera, MAGA politician, Demolition Ranch. Wow. You know what I mean? Like all these gun tubers and losers. Right-wing reality bullshit. It's cool. Guns are fine. Ranges are fun. But like this is what they do. They do show shit. And then so we got it. So we went back and forth. This fucking loser. And they're all like this, all of them. So this Morgan J. Freeman, not Morgan Freeman, but Morgan J. Freeman, put out, "Dear Mr. Zelensky, on behalf of a majority of Americans, I apologize for what our snowflakes on a behalf of a president tried to do to you today. You stood strong and showed us what love and country means. Thank you, Zelensky. F you, Donald Trump and JD Vance." Where'd he go? Where is he? There he goes. "I'll buy you full kit, rifle, and plane ticket if you want to fight for Ukraine so bad." This dude who, again, his entire identity on the internet is being this war bro vet. You know, I was in the war on terror. I was a veteran. Then I did SWAT stuff, and I'm just an operator. I'm American operator doing America stuff. Like that's this dude. Like that's cringe, but that's what they do. Him and his whole group of them. Brandon Herrera. I wish Fat Electrician makes me laugh sometimes, but he's cucked too. Fucking all of them. The whole unsubscribed podcast. Fucking losers that are veterans that do dog and pony show shit that aren't serious. You know why? It's because we didn't have a serious mission in the Middle East. That's why. We went to the Middle East because America, right? And we did get revenge for 9/11. We did do that. We got Osama bin Laden, but we spent 20 years there. And we tried to spread hearts and minds and a bunch of bullshit. And we got nothing for it. And then the terrorists ended up taking back major cities that we fought and died for because we didn't have a plan there, just like with Ukraine. But anyways, so we had nothing. We were not fighting a morally sound war in the Middle East for revenge, whatever. But the revenge was given in 2011. And so when there is something morally sound, like supporting Ukraine because an imperialist invader is coming to rape, steal, kill, murder your entire family, these fucking clowns like Donut Operator and other loser veterans, which I won't even call him a veteran to his face, actually. I don't care how much time he served. You have rhetoric like this, you're dead to me. I don't care how many ribbons he got. I don't give a shit how honorable he was in the army. Go fuck yourself. If this is like how you're going to carry yourself after you're out of the service, you are nothing. Oh, you went into the Middle East in the box and ran convoys. I don't know what the fuck he did. For nothing. So I told him, Donut Operator's entire group of vet bro losers spend more of their money on hair products, because they do. I mean, shit. Look at their shit, dude. Boy, they like having this the good hair. And I got a lot of hair. I have more hair than these fucks will. Like in 10 years from now, I will have more hair than them. Because I'm genetically superior in my hair, I guess, than these fucking losers. But all they care about is like their beards and their fucking hair. Look at this guy. Look at this clown. Fucking making sure that look at there's their dumb fuck podcast. They all gotta have the slick back hair and popped collars and act like fucking like they're do you know what they're trying to channel? They're trying to channel this like CIA operator, you know, guy that's knowledgeable. He's like a little shifty, edgy, little edge, you know, little mystery. That's what they're trying to do, but it's like fake as fuck. This dude built like is obsessed with Soviet weapons, and like his whole thing is gun tubing, and then he went and ran for office and got shit on. Fat electrician again makes me laugh sometimes, but all he does is like find shit on communism, like that's his thing. Which yeah, but your whole thing, your whole actual side of the political aisle is fascism. All of them, fuck all of them, all the whole unsubscribed podcast. This whole thing can go fuck themselves in the highest way possible. They want to stand there and use soldiers for props. That's what they're really doing because they're props. They're props. But when you actually have soldiers that are fighting a war for their independence, they are fucking clowns. So I said, donut operator, yep. They spend more on their hair elections and big gun ranges these days than actually caring for others in the warrior ethos that we learned in the service. So then this clown goes, well, I actually make money off the gun range days. I actually make money off that, you know. I don't really spend money, I make money off that. Okay. That's a good thing we didn't have Americans like you back in World War I, World War II, or the Revolutionary War. I told him that you represent the worst of us. And then he summarized it as, hell hath no fury like a vet seeing another vet being successful. Like all these right-wing losers say every time. That's their go-to. That's like their default settings, like the enforcer did. I told him, I don't care if you're successful. I wish you all the success. Like, go off and be the most successful person ever. Using your platform to shit on people supporting a country at war, while your entire identity is war, and being a veteran war bro internet figure, is clown behavior no matter how you spin it. No matter how you want to cope and say whatever you want to say. And then, there you go. What an absolute bitch. I will tell this to, if I ever have the displeasure of walking or meeting the unsubscribed podcast and all those fucking clowns and this loser, I'm telling him. For what? I'm gonna walk up right to him and tell him right to his goddamn face, you are a clown. He'll probably try to play media bullshit. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know. Probably he's gonna have like a Starbucks cup in his hand. God, I hate people like this. I have a rage. I hate these people. If anything, sometimes like that's what we talk about with Nick and Georgie and SK Media, that at least like there's people that are just own their evil, right? That are just like, and that I'm not saying that they're better, but because obviously fuck them, but there's people that play games that try to sell themselves as like not a piece of shit. And I'm an asshole. I know I am. I can be a piece of shit sometimes, probably. I know what I am, but my energy, I believe, is placed in the right areas in terms of like my actual energy. I definitely could be an asshole. I know I can, but my energy is placed correctly, I feel. Donut operator and people like them are their energy is placed in money, or like how can they make the most money out of the situation while not actually caring about any of the warrior ethos or any of the things that got him to where he is. Get a new pair of Ray-Bans. Maybe a new pair of headset. The new headset's cool. Yeah, donut operator. Former SWAT officer. No wonder. And then these motherfuckers always put gamer in their shit. What gaming are they doing? Ever notice that? You guys ever notice that most political people, because this is a political person, they put gaming in their profiles and everything, and they say they're gamers, and they play 0 games. No gaming. Gaming does not happen, but they're somehow gamers. They play like Call of Duty or something. They play Call of Duty Warzone, and then they're gamers. Anyways, you guys want to tune into some real gaming today? We're playing Tiger Woods Golf, because I play all the games. We're playing we might play Kingdom Come later today. I just need like a palate cleanse a little bit. just like something different for like once, and then we're going back to the story. But we got Tiger Woods golf. Real gamers play golf. I don't care. Or tennis, or table tennis, or whatever the fuck. Do I play Apex? Nah, not in recent times. I mean, I can, but I'm just, battle royales are just kind of like, I'm over it at this point. You know, just like I like the traditional multiplayer team deathmatch and shit. Like, I'm over that. I got over that like 10 years ago, and now I'm over Warzone, and I'm over battle royales. I like extraction shooters. I like the ones where you're put in a situation and you got to go loot everything and then get out of there. Those are fun. Tactical extraction shooters are fun. Well, battle royales are just, I'm over it. So come on over. Yeah, I'll golf with friends. If you have 2K25 and you want to play and match up, let's do it. You know, it's Sunday golf. I'm going to relax. I'm going to go smoke 3 joints and then fire up Tiger Woods. All right. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. You guys are awesome. We have more panels to come in the future. I'll probably chill out. I've bothered so many people asking them for panels for this weekend. But I mean, I'll reach out to more people if you are. It's like, I don't want to ever diminish someone that isn't an influencer or a content creator, because I value your voice just as much as I would anyone else. It's just with the content creators and influencers, they also have an audience too. And when we're trying to get out the most amount of information to the most amount of people, that's why I bring on influencers and content creators. OSINT, you know, people with larger followings, because then their big following is going to just tune in because they're a part of it. But if you have like something, or, you know, if you want to talk about Ukraine and you're cool with I'm going to ask you if you're comfortable with answering these questions. But I do want to host more like just chill viewer Discord calls too, like we did, where I'm not like asking you very complicated questions that these panelists can answer, but just kind of like asking you how you feel in your own way, and then you can respond however you want. But yeah, if you have a platform, especially if you're Ukrainian, I would like to have you on my panels. Just reach out, be like, hey, next time you're hosting one, let me know. I'd love to be a part of it. You can email, DM. I'm on social media across everything. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so. I hope to see you over on my gaming channel for the rest of the day. If something breaks, like America is harder, I'll come back here and we'll do breaking news. But hopefully we have a chill rest of the day, and then tomorrow we can get back at it again. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Have a fantastic day. Thank you to all the members of the stream. Thank you to the supporters on the stream. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to the mods. Slava Ukraine, Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, and JD Vance do fuck off. Take care.